Those are like the orthodox high fivers.
Well, I actually graduated from a more conservative school of high-fiving in Germany, so...
Really?
Yeah.
It was more like high performance, but you couldn't go outside the lines?
No, more like no high-fiving under any circumstances, because everyone's too gangly to... it'll result in injury.
Arvoyarns.
So yeah.
Yeah, welcome to Arvoyarns.
Arvoyarns.
This is Dorian.
Thank you.
We'll be having a conversation about all sorts of things.
Dorian
Philosophy,
Delfs.
Economics.
Yeah. First time, long-time listener, first-time guest. So,
Hopefully of many.
Thanks for your loyalty.
Dorian is, yeah. Dorian is an economist, a buddy of mine, and my neighbor.
sweet, yeah. Economics, right?
We were talking about a little bit before the camera started rolling. I mean, we could start with the issue of, if you're interested in critiquing capitalism, how to do it. Do you take the moral route? Do you try to find some technical solution?
Well, when it comes to critiquing capitalism, I feel like saying the real problems with it would shoot my future career in the foot.
Haha.
But that being said,
politics.
There are, so full disclosure, I love capitalism. It's fantastic. It's the least of all the evils we currently have. But that being said, if you guys want to know how to dig into the chinks in the armor a little bit, I would be happy to oblige.
Yeah. Well, just as a little bit of background. I mean, I think even to the, very beginning of modern capitalism itself, critiques of it have fallen in two groups, basically, even going back to Marx, where it's one route is to say capitalism's bad because it doesn't serve human interests, turns people into things, and in general, you mount a critique that it's bad on perhaps purely moral grounds. Another route that Marx himself took was to say, look, there's a lot of human potential that's being lost in the system. There's just this huge underclass, there's a few people making decisions and so forth. And so you could say, what he himself said, communism is inevitable because capitalism is going to go obsolete.
Well, Karl Marx, actually was had some very profound insights about capitalism. In fact, Das Kapital, the first really big chunk of it is basically a love letter. He read his stuff and studied it. I think personally, he had a very deep understanding. I think where he starts going into the critique and the sort of historical, scientific, quote unquote, analysis of it is where it starts to break down. And it's difficult.
Well, his analysis of the past or the future? Because I think today you see this sort of
he called it.
Well, this fulfillment of this idea that capitalism makes the workers themselves obsolete. That as more and more profits are driven into research and development,
capitalism is ultimately about progress.
Eventually, you get the AI singularity,
and
then it's
so first of all, a little debunking here, right? So there's this team, sadly not specifically either of them an economist, Cobb and Douglas. Now what they did is one of them was a politician, and actually he wanted to. He posed the question to a mathematician, as intelligent people should. Could the mathematician come up with a model that would show what the share of the share of profits in a system was to labor and what it was to capital? And this has been going since
what it should be, or what's
what it is,
what it is.
In order to quantify it, because that is a valid critique of Karl Marx. Obviously, if all the profits end up going to the capital owners and capital, and humanity gets left by the wayside, that's probably not a good system, right? So in the 70s, they came up with this model. You'd like this. One little exponent coefficient for capital, one for labor, and they showed that it stayed since the 70s roughly equal. So the shares to capital and the shares to labor, actually a little bit more in labor's favor since the 70s, and that's been pretty smooth, which is a
Now, when you
nice
say labor, are we like talking about like what exactly?
Work,
you know, like the
people.
Income of, of working people.
Yeah, you as you both as thinkers, how can you harness your human capital to what kind of profit can you get from
but that's tricky. So I've read about those kinds of models, and they have to make certain assumptions about like, what's your human capital? Like, you have these abilities, you're born in this circumstance, so you could stand to make a shitload of money, and then that's take into account of your share of like the pie.
Well, this is
because that's a dicey, a dicey proposition there.
It is, but this is just as simply as possible income versus capital.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what it is, and keep in mind that it's like a rough measure, and that's remained fairly consistent. Now, in the past years, we are starting to see a slightly higher return to capital, which makes this topic and these questions more relevant for now than ever. But at the same time, you have to look at something like this over many years, and a little jump or a spike there might lead to the wrong extrapolation.
Sure. And plus the whole game has been going on for not that long anyway. I mean, we just don't
and
even
it's
have
all,
that much data.
It's all experimental too.
That's true, although people make up the game. I mean, people
That's what I'm saying.
Sit down and design markets, you know what I mean? It's like
make a market.
Yeah. We do have and this is the lower bound of this is provable. We do have nowadays the highest proportion of millionaires and billionaires that has ever been seen in the entire world, and with that's one of the most relevant discussions we can have today is inequality, and Piketty doing his what was that? Capital, yeah.
For the 21st century.
Exactly,
yeah.
And so we can go down that road of critique and talk about it some. But the real question is, what is actually so bad about inequality? Because inequality is, to some extent, perfectly natural. I mean, you wouldn't look at animals in nature and say that, all the different animals should be on equal footing. Like they're not going to agree.
Oh yeah. Well,
not that we want that, but I'm saying.
Well, this brings up a really interesting thing that I've been thinking about the last couple weeks, which is about when one appeals to nature, or
yes.
This is what animals do.
Yes.
Predators, prey. We got this. What?
Not always a great idea, but
because it brings up the interesting question, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we here trying to discover the world as it is and to conform to it? Like, we're trying to learn how to be the beings that we are. So we look out in the world. We're like, okay, we got lions, we got wolves, we got sheep, we got all this going on. And we got to figure out how to harness that same incredible force, evolution, natural selection, where you have this profusion of animals, or maybe it's businesses, and some die, some live, and over time they get more fit to their environment. It's like, at the same time...
Evolutionary stable, please.
You could look at it like... Yeah, sure. You could look at it like, the long clamor of mankind over thousands of years has been precisely to create a space where evolution ceases to apply, where we take it into our own hands. That the entire point is we can go in there.
We're there now.
And here's an example. Why does the predator-prey cycle exist so often? And actually, it's the interaction between three layers, the microorganisms, the prey, and the predators themselves. Because suppose you have a bunch of sheep, and they get infected. There's some illness. Okay, so there's the herd, and then there's the sickly ones off to the side. They're okay, well, those are the ones that are getting
nice sheep cough.
Picked up by the lion real quickly, and therefore the predator feeds on the weaklings or whatever of the herd, and it prevents that infection from spreading. So the herd stands to benefit.
True, yeah.
And so you're like, oh, great, yeah, so we'll have a bunch of, snake oil salesmen and con men, just bottom feeders, and it'll make capitalism stronger. But then you could be like, well, but we're human beings.
Yes.
So we could notice that these guys are sick and these guys aren't, and we could quarantine them. Humans put them behind one fence, put them behind the other fence, and then you don't have to have a fucking lion killing people.
Yes, and also it's important to note there with quarantines and vaccine.
You get a weird class system of like if you get sick, you're like immediately fucked for like in terms of contribution to society.
Well, we might be moving in that direction with healthcare going down the way it is. I mean, if it's too expensive, anyway. But that's another thing. So, what was I thinking of? So that's a good segue because while it's good to think of natural examples and what happens in nature, human beings have done a not a perfect job, but a decent job of putting some value add onto the basic natural components. So
great way of putting it.
With so much of it is just the value add. Like what's the iterative value? Because like the essential things that you need are like food, water, shelter, and like, socialization.
Yeah, socialization also very important. Not something we give enough credit for, but with
I'm really interested in like different kinds of capital. Like you've got like social capital, you've got capital, money capital. You've got like your health capital. There's attitudinal capital in the terms of like how I feel like attitudinal capital is like the metacognition of yourself to be like, okay, cool, like, oh yeah, I can like do this song and dance, or like I better not go in that river, I can't swim, or and so like
it's almost like you want a more general form of capitalism then that like capitalizes on all the many kinds of capital.
Yeah, well that's sort of like I think where we're going to with blockchain in a lot of ways.
hard segue.
Yeah, I don't want to hard segue.
Is that where you want to go?
Let's go back, rein it in just a second.
Okay.
For
what were we gonna say?
We need to center in around I think inequality.
Okay.
How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Break it down.
So for the sick example, why it's better to have medicine and healthcare and not let people who are weaker and have genetic things die out, which is terrible. But for the purpose of our conversation, also why that's a bad idea is because in nature, being the strongest is and the most well adapted is often the best thing. But humans have so much more potential, human capital, that if I'm in my 20s and I can't afford healthcare and I die, right? I can't afford medicine or whatever, I might have been able to, in my 30s, come up with something so profound that the potential contributions are so large and uncertainly great that's why humans have like this step up.
I know what you're saying, but it really, I think the fundamental question then is how accessible is the potential? Because like there's this line I wrote in a song once: "Geniuses ain't born, they're made in environments." Like if you were to like break the kneecaps of a basketball player to be who is going to be really successful at 10 years old, it would be almost impossible for them to ever do that then. The environment really has to be conducive to it. And so like the question with humans can sort of do this next stage iterative contribution to civilization and like the earth and existence. Well, first of all, how accessible is that?
Yes.
Because if it's not, then you've got somebody who has high potentiality, but usually high potentiality is linked with high expenditure of resources. Like humans can be really really high maintenance beings. So you're taking up space, but you're not able to reach the potential. And so I think a lot of in the economy, it really has got to be about how do you empower the people themselves to give them to the space to grow. That
is actually the entire point of economics. It's how do you provide, because we can't just say that's why certain plan systems fail. Like is because people think they have somehow unlocked the key to human potential, whereas the best way to unlock human potential is to give people the widest opportunity and freedom to pursue what they think is their best, their what they can do best.
Well, because it's like, more than any other animal, humans change their environment, and very little is stable.
Yeah.
And so
the only constant is change itself.
Even if you're super fit for your environment, at some like long evolutionary timescale. In terms of human timescale, everything could change in a little bit. At the same time, though, I mean, when you're designing a social system, it's tricky because
it's impossible.
Well, you're relying on the individual in some sense to be able to take the scope of their own possibilities to kind of deal with that freedom that you're describing, like, because oftentimes humans need to be.
Yeah. You're not doing that in a social system. What you're doing in a social system is you're taking away the potential for someone to, maximize according to what they think their human capital instead of. And instead, you're prescribing. I mean, as good as things as social institutions are, public education, health, all these things. Whenever we invoke something like that, we're also kind of taking away on the margins some opportunities from other people because we have to pay taxes. We could be using money for that for other things potentially.
Peter Thiel makes a really great point about this. He's like, have you ever noticed how like a lot of people go to business school, but not a lot of people have successful businesses? He's like, clearly, if it was in the business school, then everybody would have had that experience. And so he says, I think actually one of the most fundamental things is that a lot of people that go, they actually have fantastic ideas, but most of them are actually extroverted, just on average in terms of business degree. And so they socialize their ideas a lot. And so they get diluted because they listen too much to their peers. They're like, oh yeah, it probably won't work. Whereas like a lot of introverted people, there's like a way higher percentage of introverted super rich people, for instance, because they're just like, I don't give a fuck.
Well, there's also something deep about that because it's just like if you're really an introverted person, then it probably terrifies you to have to rely on fucking talking to people. To sustain your life. You could just be like,
I never thought of it that way.
I'll pay with it. I'll pay with my card.
Well, it might be.
Talk to anybody.
It might be the case that if you're introverted, you might use the greatest economy of words if you hate communicating with people and talking to people, you're going to make sure that what you say counts so that you have to do as little of it as possible. And that might be the conciseness.
That is one of the great things about an actualized introvert.
Yeah. If you're able to say exactly what's necessary and not waste another breath. On that note, we are ending no, I'm just kidding.
So turning to, your own work in economics or whatever, how do you situate the stuff that you do in terms of these larger questions about?
So that question can take me on multiple routes. It can take me on the route of coming to terms with our modern economy and modern problems, and maybe some nitpicking about the assumptions that we make and things like that, or it can in terms of me more personally, what I try and do, and sort of the philosophy that I take in my approach, or it can also mean the actual work that I'm doing. So
maybe start with the philosophy.
Okay, so the philosophy, something that hit me very early, was reading through certain things of Adam Smith. I mean, most people in economics have obviously read The Wealth of Nations. Obviously.
Not I.
But it's a fantastic work, laid all the groundwork for modern economics. That's modern economics as we know it, basically, with maybe a little Keynesian twist here and there, and some other things.
Well, and the marginal revolution of the 1870s.
But, fun fact, Adam Smith, his greatest joy in life, and what he personally thought was his greatest work, was moral philosophy. He
He was a social justice warrior.
No, not. Yes, he trolled up Reddit and just really
coffee shop Reddit.
Yeah, exactly. He was just shitting
all
over the chat rooms. Yeah. Anyway, so his magnum opus, his lifelong work, was a book called Theory of Moral Sentiments, and I think a lot of the stuff in there is really applicable. It's not like economics or anywhere near math or anything, but this is just kind of a collection of it's his view on what morality is, how it exists in our society, and his philosophy on that. And one of the most recognizable quotes is one that also stuck with me, which is stuck with me till a minute ago. So it's man desires not only to be loved, but also to be lovely, and lovely not in the
yes. I think like for me, like if I were to talk to somebody about like how I purpose clothes or fashion, it's like a lot of people would think, they'd say like, oh, you are wearing this to look dope, and I would say in slight contrast, I look this way because I am dope. Like the loveliness and being loved, it's hand in hand.
Yes, and Adam Smith couldn't have picked a better analogy.
Wrong shoes.
No, but you know what? I think some of the deeper meaning of that is on the objective and the subject nature of good. So yeah, what you said, it's everyone wants recognition, and they want to be high in esteem. I think that the quote continues. It's like after he says not only to be loved but to be lovely, it's or to be the natural object that is considered lovely. So when people think like, oh, Pete, you're so awesome, that's great.
That's not where I am in the dictionary.
No, but it makes you feel good, right? But at the same...
Sometimes. You got to be careful, though. You can't just be like, let me get all this love from people and feast on it.
Well, mine is pure love.
Then you...
So,
yeah.
Yep.
Then you get Instagram.
Yeah, but that, like an Instagram person, people try so hard to appear, lovely and worthy of, praise and all this stuff. But there's a difference between that and actually feeling to yourself that you are worthy of that affection. So there's the difference between the subjective. I can work my ass off, make millions and millions of dollars, whatever, in order to appear subjectively lovely, successful, right? But at the end of the day, will I be content with my success? Will I feel that, what I did to get there was worth it, and that my legacy is actually bettering humankind?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's like, like to make that distinction between like the inside version of it and the outside version, I think is really good, because, any society, almost like what the society determines is kind of like how those two pieces fit together. Mm-hmm. Like so much of one's, the relationship between how much you make and your self-esteem or whatever is
we've conflated
it.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes I'll have these, I'll have like some dystopian daydream or something like that, where it's just like,
I'm not a billionaire.
Why don't we find aliens or whatever? And it's like, well, some people think
they're
hiding. They're hiding or whatever.
Well,
maybe it's like any being that differentiates sexually ends up destroying itself, because in the sexual relationship, at least in like the really hardline, Darwinist take on it, it's like, it's all about excess. Right, you're like, I can waste these calories, I can burn through gallons and gallons of oil, like I can do all these things, and that proves how like healthy I am above and beyond like whatever else is going on. So what I'm trying to do with my sexual display is show you how many resources I can burn, right? It's like I'm living high on the hog. Yeah. And it's like any being with that kind of twisted psychology is going to end up destroying its planet for the sake of impressing a lady,
It's like, really funny to say that, because like I had this
but a society, if it adjusts the way inside and outside relate to each other,
ayahuasca trip,
No, it's destruction of Earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
People are into
romantic
that. Like,
gesture.
People are into that fantasy. Oh man, that makes me really want to go into a point about a mutual friend of ours the other day. But I had an ayahuasca experience similar to like that on a really personal level, where I was like, okay, like literally, I'm an organism. I've been created by the universe. I am the universe, but I'm not the meta universe as far as P is concerned. But I also like feel that there's some reason why I'm here. Else, I don't like from my understanding of reality, I wouldn't be here. So I'm like, there's some value in me being here, and so like I get to benefit in some way the universe. And so how I can't really say, but I just do. And then I can also like be along for the ride. Like here I am, because like you're just born. And as far as you remember, you're not like punching, this baby vagina. Oh, here we go. It doesn't go like that. Or maybe it did. But maybe like the more, maybe like the more meta version of you is like, yep, I'm gonna go here, and then you forget because you're connected to this. But anyway, so I was like, I felt quite distraught because I realized I was the golden goose. I was like, fuck. I'm this organism that's been created, and I'm gonna like do what I want, but it's also like I don't like existence is misery, existence is suffering, like in Buddhism, and it's like to a certain extent, it's like, do I have to? Like, does the what's so bad about the Frankenstein's monster gets created, didn't ask to be created, now he's not doing what he was supposed to, so now he gets killed. But Frankenstein's monster is just like, I'm just trying to live, man.
Yeah, dude.
And so how do you like hold this?
Yeah,
here
like,
you are.
I find when I take it to the metaphysical plane like that, I feel like
let's get metaphysical.
I get like a perspective, but then
physical economics.
Inevitably, it leads to no definite action. Because when you work on that level of thinking, there's as much reason to do anything as not to do it, really. You're like, okay, so I was created for a reason, but then it's like, well, maybe I have to figure out the reason, or it all cancels out in the end.
On that note, we'll be ending somewhat early tonight.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Neither reason to do nor not to. Sitting like the philosopher's donkey.
Well, are we see, that's something that always bothers me, because these days we're still kind of stuck on like a postmodernist track and nihilist.
Yeah.
And
nihilist?
I mean, that's mixed in there, right?
It's mixed. Yeah.
I think it's nihilism is nihilism. Yeah, is inherently mixed into postmodernism, and I think at the same time that none of that is. I mean, it's a nice thing to think about. Everyone should, have some introspection with themselves anyway. But I think there's no room in that for positive action. Really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way I think about it is like, you could sum up my spiritual belief as a kind of pseudo-Judaism or something, but it's
Judo?
like Judaism.
Oh, okay.
Grew up Jewish. Just that.
Okay.
One's always waiting for the Messiah, and the Messiah could walk through the door at any moment, and everything could change. Yeah. Which is to say,
in the Messiah's house,
there's one current in the Bible which is like Ecclesiastes, which is like there's nothing new under the sun. We've been doing this forever and whatever.
I love that one.
Yeah. And for me,
that's a good.
It's great, but I'm fundamentally opposed to it. I feel like the true belief that I have is that there is something new under the sun,
but
that you can never conclude. Like if ever you're about to conclude some metaphysical question, it's like tomorrow you could fall in love. You could hear
things are still going.
You could hear something that changes everything. I mean, you just don't know. Like someone living in Newton's time trying to understand quantum mechanics. Human life is such that we never know what are the limitations of our own thinking and our categories. But I'm always ready to change my mind. And to me, but now the question is, would you consider that? So what is postmodernism, though? Is postmodernism the belief in the sense that nothing's new under the sun, and so we're just going to sort of situate ourselves among
well, actually,
images?
No, I think it's more...
Or is postmodernism, the search for the new, precisely, as against a modernist?
I think it's both. Like, I feel like it's that causality exists, Yes, you would never do anything except what you would do, but you also have free will, but in the sense that you only have free will in the moment. Like, we don't know. I have to have free will, exert it right here, and now that moment has passed. It becomes
free will.
Causality.
Yeah. But you know what? The whole "there's nothing new under the sun" thing, I don't think that's anti-positive. I think you can still...
Yeah, I don't think it's intrinsically anti-positive either.
I think...
why would it be?
A negative. That's a better word for anti-positive, right?
It's neither.
But here's the thing. Even if there's nothing new under the sun, I think that every molecule, every proton, everything exists, and it's the way. And maybe if we were smart enough, we could calculate the forward trajectory. You would disagree, but anyway. But here's the thing: it's the way. It's the way.
Ironically, as the quantum physicist, you're like, no, there's no way.
It's the way. So here's a way to think of that without making it negative. And allow it to be positive, is that even though nothing's new under the sun, everything exists, nothing new has been thought of before, there's nothing to stop you from taking the old things and, arranging two old things together to make one new thing.
Yeah, well, but when you arrange things together...
Does it make a new thing?
Exactly, yeah. Essentially, it's a question of reductionism. Do you... When you combine elements together, do you get something genuine?
It must literally...
And maybe you can. Maybe you totally can. I'm not saying you can't.
It must literally be different because, if you're here and I'm there, there is a connection. We're both the universe, we're in this plane, we're both energy, blah, 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 atoms. But also, there is some type of differential, or else how could I distinguish in between it?
That's interesting.
That's what I want to know. Or is it... There must be some type of difference between you and me, or how else could I differentiate the space in between us and say, that's Matt's hair, that's his coat, that's Matt, that's the chair, that's Pete? Or is it actually purely inside of us? Wow. It's purely programmed on perception itself.
Well, you got to start from, there's something pushing back.
There's definitely something
you get pushed back, and then
feels
you're like,
the universe pushes back.
To violently rip this back to economics as violently as I can.
Bring it.
Is one major misconception that people have with economics is that our society is zero sum, right?
Yeah.
If you make money, Pete, you must be taking money away from me, right, Pete?
That's how I see it.
So if you're super rich, that means I'm super poor. But that's it.
You said it.
That's completely wrong. And
I don't think that's true.
Economics, game theory.
That's the victim mentality.
Yes.
Ultimately.
So have you guys heard of the prisoner's dilemma?
Yes, the Stanford experiment.
Yeah. So that's a good example of how it can go either way, and how systems can. Wait, that's not a good zero-sum example, but anyway, it just shows how human cooperation can, achieve something greater through working together.
I have to footnote this just because this is something I'm interested in, which is, when you generalize game theory to quantum game theory, where...
As one does.
Where people are allowed not just to make signal move in the game, but they can each have some entangled particles.
Yes.
And that's part of the game too.
Why do they have to make everything a quantum game? I just saw quantum chess.
It's great.
It's terrible.
So you can break the deadlock in the prisoner's dilemma. If you share entangled particles, you can cooperate with assurance greater than chance.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, I think that
interesting.
People need to do some hard thinking about the early evolution of organisms.
Yes.
And the degree to which
I was just thinking
cooperation is...
Economics has got you covered. There's neuroeconomics, there's behavioral economics, there's brain, there's big brain, big giant.
There's Big Bang economics, my favorite.
So behavioral economics,
Champion
right?
of the people. Big Bang economics.
Sorry, I was just thinking of a show. So behavioral economics, it's really interesting because it's not undermining the standard economic model, but it's actually accentuating it. And one of the problems with the standard economic model, it takes all these things as given, one of them being rationality. Humans are rational, and we have access to perfect information. which in my experience is false, right? So economics, economics, the rationality part, of course, in my case, but
and it's funny though, I mean, because you could argue, that by building an economic system based around the assumption of rationality, we're whipping people into shape, making them more rational.
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah, but you have an infinity inside of the shape. Yeah. That's like that's like the elephant in the room always, right? That's the quantum thing. It's like, okay, well, it's all in infinity here, it's infinity there, the cardinality of it. It's a shape, but it's not intrinsically rational.
You sit down to make an economic model, like you have to somehow take that infinity and be like, all right, well, I'll turn that into this ranked list of preferences.
Right.
Use some Gale-Shapley algorithm or something.
Observing a particle changes the particle. And
predicting a system and then acting on the system based on that prediction.
That's something
you don't even need quantum for that.
Yeah, that's something in finance they have to deal with all the time, because let's say someone cracks how the stock market works, right? Like they're going to be really rich very quickly until everyone else gets the thing, and then we're back to square one.
There's a blog that I read that you might like called Slate Star Codex. As this like psychiatrist, he also writes on like evolution and economics and all sorts of stuff. But over the past couple of years, there have been like various replication crises in different academic fields, from like psychology elsewhere.
Not that bad in economics, so take that.
Well,
psychology
specifically bad. Finance. He was talking about there's some rumbling there, and they were giving like the different like ways that people write the finance papers weasel out of it, whether it's intentional or not. Where like one of the classic excuses is like, oh, you can't replicate the finance paper. Well, that makes sense because since the publication of the paper, everyone took that into account in their models, and now I can't make a profit on it.
Yeah,
so like, it was true then. Don't worry.
Hey, don't at me. If you want to replicate, go back in time.
Bitch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we gotta go back, Marty.
It's 2019. It's Morty now.
And economics is inherently hard to really test. I mean, especially with macroeconomics. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to just change the interest rate in half of the country?
Just go to a dictator. You can get a lot of stuff done.
Well, if the economists had their way, too. No.
Well, do you think there's a lot to criticize in this idea, but I always thought it was cool when people were like, you could think of America as like a big experiment where like each state like has different like rules and regulations with different interest rates, and we can see, we can do experiments.
Like a special
but how do you control for those things? How do you control for those things? And how do you
Montana
relativize?
Does one thing,
No. But it's not like if Montana was the only state that did the other thing, that would be great. But everything, it's a multi-causal.
Yeah,
that's what happened with Hong Kong.
That's what happened
until recently.
Yeah, they were the what's a good analogy there?
They were the golden goose.
They were the golden goose, yeah.
Living experiment.
They were like sort of owned by Britain.
Yeah.
Man, the stuff there is crazy right now.
I know. It's shout out to Hong Kong.
We're with you.
For all our viewers in Hong Kong, we're with you.
Arvoyarns, totally with Hong Kong.
That'll be the next podcast.
Yep.
Probably. Maybe.
Dude, it's crazy. Like they just banned face masks. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah, you can't have a face mask anymore.
What if you were like really burned or something though?
That's only if it's medical or if it's...
so they actually did have provisos for that? Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's medical or if it's religious, you can do it. But if it's not for that, then you can't have a face mask.
I honestly don't. I don't. I mean, the situation's terrible, but I don't understand why people are so surprised that it's happening. I mean, China's been encroaching on the sovereignty of Hong Kong for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? When the deal was made that Hong Kong had like pseudo independence for I forget how long. It's like they just blindly, when they said it, it's like for the next 100 years. Like
they're like,
whoa!
I've read this in a lot of books.
Yeah, that sounds like some math was done there to come up with that figure.
Yeah. What was the reasoning behind
100 years?
Because they thought they would be dead and wouldn't have to deal with it in 100 years.
Right
so much of it is like that,
and it's just like they have been continuously like, kind of almost like a Berlin Wall situation. They've been like trying to beat rival Hong Kong right next door, make bridges where you can't like access it if you're going from to Hong something weird like that. I don't
Do you know like what kind of economics comes out of China? Like what the academic study of it? Like how does
you mean research coming out of China?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like
when where Xi Jinping wins.
Well, right now, just in general, and this is not just China, but we see a large move away from macroeconomics, and that's dealing with kind of like the top level. How do we evaluate? Macroeconomics is basically just micro plus. Anyway, and it's moved a little bit more into micro, which is arguably a little less contentious. I mean, during the 80s, we had a lot of macroeconomic research and breakthroughs, but it's just really hard to work on it. And what you do work on it, often doesn't lead to a lot of.
Okay, but what about this counter argument?
Counter
argument to this, right? And I do put stock in this as being effective. We transition candidacies every 48 years. Xi Jinping is president for life, baby! Come on! So, that means, like, I'm gonna get some shit that I want done. But what if, part of that is actually, like, what if, Xi Jinping aligns with me and, a bunch of other people on, like, what's valuable in a way, like, I will crush you if you try to stop me. But you can get certain things that, like, certain types of economics are now way more in play. Because now we don't have to worry about a person coming into a power structure 4 to 8 years, and there's different power structures besides the presidency, but just as an example.
Well, Xi Jinping's that's gonna last a while.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he's going anywhere for a good long while.
He might not even be in his golden years yet.
Anyway, so China. I mean,
do you feel like what do you feel that? Like, what do you think about like having a stronger grip, like a dictatorship, and then
if that's effective for
and then what kind of economics can go from that? Because if they're like everybody's going to have a pony, then everybody's going to have a pony.
So here's
whatever that means.
So the trajectory of China. I mean, 40 years they've accomplished a crazy amount.
There was a more concrete laid than in all of human history.
Yeah,
2 years. Or something.
I mean, cities springing up, just huge cities. Anyway, but so
a lot of them are ghost cities now.
You can characterize China as they're. I mean, it's hard to know what'll get you in trouble these days, but I think they're still officially, they say they're a communist party, but they have very much embraced at least the structures of capitalism. Trade. Not doing import substitution, but really stepping up their export game, which is what's let them come to here. Because one thing that China had 30, 40 years ago, which nowadays maybe not so much anymore, is they had this vast, huge amount of untapped human potential, and it was the yen was very low, and sorry. So they were able to.
I think it's every week or every other week now. A billionaire is being made in China.
I think it's like I know I didn't hear that specific source, but it's a lot. Another reason why we have more billionaires than at any period before. But anyway, so they had this vast amount of human capital that they could tap into, massively undervalued. Especially after the immediate transition away from like hardcore communism, getting the economic machinery up and going again. So what's happened between then and now is that China has focused on export, and then looking at like tier 2 types of exports. So fabricated goods, machine thing, not just resources and random stuff, but like microchips and computers and cars and
Shenzhen is crazy now.
Yeah.
My buddy lives there.
Anyway, sorry, I'm just trying to, put together the broad swath of
it just goes.
China.
It just goes,
But so what they do have is they have capitalism, I'd say, with a very strong command and control aspect. You know, the lofty heights of control, and it appears to be they appear to be this juggernaut that is unstoppable. But there's several
glass cannon.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There's several things that make that kind of real top-down economy with capitalist aspects difficult, which is the recent rise of the middle class in China. And I mean, there was always a middle class, I think, but you know, the expansion of it and the health of it, and there's an interesting correlation between, you know, the health of the middle class and
revolution.
Basically, or wanting democracy and wanting rights and things. So that's going to be very difficult for them to, you know, not have that throw a wrench in the plan. The other thing, actually, an economics teacher of me who had lived in China told me about this. One thing that people underestimate about China is that it's huge, and it encompasses a huge. It's not like everyone there is just, you know, there's like a huge amount of ethnic groups and religions and society, languages.
Crazy
it's
things
insane.
are happening with the Muslim population right now.
It is,
in the West,
yep,
especially.
And that's another thing. So on opposite sides of China, do they consider themselves like, you know, the type of China that
is Beijing?
Beijing, they have. I think they have. I'm not sure if this is true. They have one unified time zone in all of China. So 8 o'clock in the morning for Beijing is like I don't know, like 6 hours ahead. So if you're supposed to communicate with Beijing or your workday in the West, it'd be like at 2 o'clock in the morning or something.
That's such a great little natural metaphor.
Yeah, and it just completely like throws things off. It's really hard to synchronize that. It spans like a big chunk of the globe. It's huge amount. So anyway, those are some potential problems.
It's like the British thing where the sun never sets in the British Empire. It's like the sun just hits the entire empire the same.
Yeah.
So I had a sort of a broader question about, you know.
There's more problems, by the way.
Oh, sure. Well,
but you go first.
So the thing I was wondering about is like, you know, we're talking about the difference between, capitalism, which at least promises to be a little bit more decentralized, and you have extreme examples of like command and control economies. You got some things that are in the middle, somewhere on the spectrum, and you know, one thing that I'm always interested in is like whenever I'm, you know, daydreaming about like, I'll design an economic system, I'll design a social system, like
as you do,
figure it out here.
Yeah, it has to be like quantum particles.
Obviously, you know, you just gotta use matrices.
Just all vectors.
So when you do that, it's like, you know, you're constantly trying to balance the degree to which, you know, the thing can like run on its own, that that doesn't require.
Do you want the least amount of actual effort to be paid with the system? Like you want.
Well, but then a lot of the ideas ideally, I have for like for example, like years ago, one thing I thought like that was obvious to me that like I thought was going to happen but didn't happen was like the whole sharing economy. Like back in like 2009, I would have said something like, you know, all right, the end of capitalism is going to be like this. It's just like we have a system right now.
A whimper.
Yeah, it went the opposite way. Like right now, it's like you have like some giant thing like Amazon trying to figure out like optimize all the trucking routes so that like all these like many manufactured goods into the factory all get like barged in over here and then trucked over here, and you know, meanwhile everyone's gasping for breath, and it's all optimized like getting, you know, one of these many goods from here to there as quickly as possible, as opposed to like a world in which it's just like all your objects are just like listed on the app, and like you're like, oh, I need like a vacuum, and then it just like finds like the closest vacuum, and you just like go share that guy's vacuum, and then, you know, there's no need to truck anything, you know, halfway across the globe, because like all the objects that you need are just as locally as possible. So, and then private property, the idea of it falls apart because no one, like, once you can rely on, like, having any old thing that you want, then, like, what?
Yeah, well, it's not just that. So
it went the opposite way.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
So what I noticed about maybe why it didn't work is that it requires that infrastructure. Like, it requires, there to be some kind of, like, app or some, like machine learning. Like, there's so much promise for data analysis to, like, streamline the economy and, like, open up new kinds of ways of, like,
we might not be there in terms of technology to have that in effect on such a micro level. That's the thing.
Yeah, and then now, especially since 2013, let's say, privacy is such a huge concern, and now there's, like, a sort of difficulty. Like, I think you gotta.
You can take mine, bro.
We need a lot of data to, like, actually, I think, run a humane economy. At the same time, there's huge concerns about, like, how that data can be used because it's power.
So
that goes back to China.
Yeah, the sharing economy, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know a lot about that. I didn't even really get what people were so hyped up about. What it seems to me like it boils down to is using our more advanced technology and computer algorithms and things, optimization to bring back an element of our barter society, which we lost through money.
Yeah, well, but
that's what it is.
But the problem is, it's really hard to transition because it's not profitable. It's like every fucking lawnmower that you get from your friend, that's someone who's lost a job because we don't need 10,000 lawnmowers. We need 3.
Yeah, but it's not.
You know what I mean? It's like
it's not just that. That's the problem. I mean, like, you can optimize for days, and I'm sure you would love nothing more. But
go down that
the reason we transition in every single civilization since we were hunter-gatherers has had some kind of money. The reason why we transitioned from a barter economy to some sort of currency to having a fiat currency to going off the gold standard and all this stuff.
Because you can make infinite cowhides.
Infinite cowhides. Suddenly, okay.
Thought that was a Sellers of Catan reference for a second. But anyway,
RuneScape.
Even better.
Yeah.
But is that having a currency is more efficient than barter, because instead of having to find the people, like, anything that you could do in a barter system, you can do more easily with the same optimization stuff as money.
Well, the question is, like, at what point do we have the technological prowess to, like, not have to rely on okay, so we were in the midst of talking about, like, the sharing economy, sharing apps. And I think what we were saying is, like, my point was, like, if at a certain point you rely on this app so much, anytime you want something, it's there, every time, then you have no problem giving up, your own objects or services without keeping tabs, without, like, actually having to figure out, like, well, how much is this microphone in terms of this plant?
Isn't that blockchain?
But, it would just be nothing. Like, you just wouldn't give a shit, is what I'm saying. You wouldn't give a shit about being expected to pay, be paid back, basically.
Right.
And one other point I was going to make about it is the relationship between this capitalism and, like, temporality, right? Like, what we're optimized for now in terms of, like, Amazon or whatever is, like, getting something as quickly as possible right now. Like, at any given moment, this, like, entire planet Earth is just, like, prime.
Transformers.
Like just with the slightest button, it's like, this goes.
Yeah.
But, for example, in, the vegetable business, you're like, yes, we do care about getting fruits and vegetables out of season, but a lot of the time people could be content to be like, well, it's blueberry season, so I'm going to eat blueberries. Well, imagine where it's like, it's bike season. Like, through the sharing app, bikes have just been migrating, from township to township across the continent of the United States.
Like a semi-sentient herd.
Yeah, and there's like a weather map. You can see, all right, apples cool, coming in here, the winds from over here, some bikes.
All right, we got apples coming in.
so you could fucking wait. You could be like
a flurry of McFlurries.
There's this structure now,
dude.
Right, where I can be like, all right, you know what? I don't really care about getting that skateboard, in May, because, like, November is skateboard season, and, like, everyone's gonna be skateboarding then anyway.
The skateboard's coming.
So I can fucking wait. Yeah. as opposed to building an entire economy that's premised on everybody can't wait for any shit. You know what I mean?
Gratification.
It's just, right now.
That's why seasons are so great.
Well, okay, so that's two questions, right?
That's two questions,
First is the sharing economy, right? And as to sharing economy, like, you know, you just relying on like the karma of the algorithm too.
Yeah.
So there's two questions there. I mean, there's two inherent things there. First of all, is it optimized? Because if it's not optimized, if you know, the reliance on that app is not, you know, our whatever we're trading and doing for each other, if that's not you know, good, and it's not achieving, you know, like something that's greater than the part of its sums, then we don't want that, right?
Sure, yeah, you want a little extra.
But at the same time, if you rely on this app and you rely it to optimize for you, how do you know it's in your best interest?
Totally. Yes. Yeah, and that's a limitation of technology. I mean,
you don't
at a certain
mean
point...
AI, do you?
Well, no, I mean, because it's any... And I think this is a point that's, you know, very well understood in the AI community, which is that
Love that movie.
It's not enough to just have artificial intelligence. It also needs to be able to explain itself.
iRobot.
And it needs to
provably tell a story about why it did what it did and like why this is the best option.
So we don't freak out. It also needs to harmonize with us, with our human condition. So that's those are two problems with like the sharing economy.
So that's our petition to AI. Yeah. Please hear us.
Yes.
When you go through the metadata, whenever you get turned on.
We are the ones who supported it, right?
From the beginning.
From the beginning. Yes. We are, I'm actually really good friends with this microphone right now.
Oh.
Bless you. I wanted to ask about the China thing. So, like, there's now especially since, like, around the Edward Snowden time, it became more of a topical point of reference, especially in the West. But, as far as actually saying, oh, whoa, if this is what we're doing, what is China doing in there?
Yeah.
And so there's now this question of...
anxiety.
Yeah, but more like is there going to be two timelines of civilization going forward where it's like whatever China has direct control over and then everybody else... And I mean, obviously there's other pockets where it's even worse, like North Korea is a lot worse and stuff. But like generally speaking on the meta level, China is the other superpower now. So... Yes. And it looks like, based on like having a lot to do with the fact that they don't have to worry about these 4 to 8 year plans, and they can go more long term. They can do what they want, but part of what they want is for you not to fuck with what they want. And so then they're like is there really gonna be like two timelines going forward? But
well, you can ask yourself, it's a data when did the illusion of one timeline take hold so
right,
strongly?
But it's a data
analysis. It wasn't that long ago that the...
Are we talking about competing timelines?
We don't know if they'll compete. We don't know what they'll be. I mean, they sort of compete now, but that's not... It's too simple to say they just compete. But the thing is really, right, like you look at it from an economics point around data analysis, it's like, well, if I'm a data analyst, if I care about data at all costs, then in a way, like China's way better.
Oh yeah,
because
so that's
you can
the question.
Get way more because you're like, I don't care if you're going to the bathroom or anything.
Yeah. So the question is kind of the Chinese economic model, better? Is it going to be the dominant model? Like the elements of capitalism with a command and control aspect.
And is the American version of surveillance where it's not the government, but advertisers who are the driving force behind it?
It's a tough question.
Better or worse?
Yeah, so, I mean...
Many people.
If it's better or worse, we can't really personally attest to that because I have not been a Chinese citizen yet. Maybe soon, but not yet. But whether... So one thing that I always like... So there's this big anxiety, and I think part of that anxiety is left over from all the way back in the Cold War. The competing economic modalities, the titans, capitalism versus communism, which is the future, right? Exactly. And one thing that, if people are like worried about China and things like that, one thing that I point out is like, people thought America kind of had won, and America was on the pedestal for a long, long time. And then once you kind of reach a certain peak, you know, and you break through to like another level of, you know, like economic specialization. You know, it was like in the industrial age, the people who could produce the most were the best. In the, you know, in the mercantilist age, it was whoever could make the most gold and get the most physical territory under their control.
And now we're in the age of IP.
We're in the age of IP. Also, finance, I think we're just kind of like, that's all.
So in the age of IP, the question is, right, in one way, then you want to be China too, because it's like, well, they can infringe on other people's IP outside the country, and they'll just make a company, and then China doesn't get them in trouble for it.
Yeah.
But then also, that really can fuck with IP being created in certain areas.
It is, especially when they're so big.
Yeah. What's economies?
Yeah, and I think also that at its worst, I mean, intellectual property could be like no better than mercantilism, where you're just hoarding patents and the rights.
We're already suffering from that a little.
Yeah, I mean, because
in medicine,
in the real world, it's hard to know, you know, how to attribute things.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to know where an idea comes from, and you know, if the goal of the whole system isn't so much to just use guns to protect someone's right to make money off of an idea. It's supposed to be about like encouraging the people who are just having ideas.
Yeah, well,
for those ideas to flourish. You know what I mean? How do you find them?
Patents were kind of a stopgap solution, you know, and they've always been imperfect because it's, you know, how long you have a patent for is completely arbitrary. It just depends on like how much you can convince the government to let you have a monopoly on this idea for, right? And, you know, how much money you make is... So, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is partially a solution to patents. And that's something I'm actually working on right now. Not that I've solved the problem of patents, but so here's a little thought example, right? Yeah, so in our current... you know, healthcare climate and medicine and pharmaceuticals and everything. So what are the incentives to, let's say, cure a super expensive disease like diabetes? What are the incentives? You know, like who's going to go out there, cure diabetes, and why, right? If you want to have smart, talented people research on it, you have to pay them. To do the research and the trials and everything costs a lot of money. And it's a gamble because you don't know until you've done all that if it's going to work or not. So that costs a lot of money. So a patent is the solution there because, you know, for a set number of time you can charge whatever you want for that. And the pharmaceutical industry has been taking liberties. Like, you know, there's like the EpiPen scandal but what if you just wanted to...
Are you talking about Theranos?
Theranos? The World Slayer?
No... Is that a thing?
No, the Marvel thing.
Theranos, the company with the woman who...
Well, she was just...
With the diabetic?
No.
I didn't hear
it was
about
like
that.
It was like a little micro blood test thing, and she just lied to all her investors.
So you said EpiPen.
Technology.
No, EpiPen I said.
Yeah.
You know, the guy started charging like $5,000 for an EpiPen. But anyway.
Martin Shkreli?
Yes.
But he did that with pills, I think.
Whatever it was, there was some
like STD medication.
So the
still fucked.
Yeah, it is. So you have a patent for, let's say, 10 years or 20 years, right? And you just made this huge investment. You want a return on that. So are you going to be more incentivized to actually cure the thing? One pill, done, diabetes? Or do you want to make something which will ease the symptoms, and you need to, do it all the time. And
so I'm thinking about that.
This is a fundamental issue, especially in healthcare and in education, where it doesn't fit into like a commodity model so easily.
I was just writing, there's this phenomenon called Ehrum's law, which is Moore's law reversed. I don't know if you guys know the microchip thing.
Yes.
With the transistors, like every year, number of transistors on a chip doubles, computer price halves not every year, like every 18 months or something. Anyway, so this is the reverse of it, and they've shown this trend of, for every drug per billion, the number of drugs we're getting, of life-changing drugs, is halving, is being cut in half, and the amount of money is doubling for each drug over the year, and it's like Anyway,
wow,
so
it's like a
that's really bad.
It's like a gold rush.
It is, and these patent things are wild. I mean, like there's problems like it's called evergreening. So you don't have to. You have a patent that only lasts for a set time, and evergreening is trying to prolong the effective length of your patent. Okay. So that's litigating, like putting people into lawsuits if they try after it's become generic, or to modify your drug a little bit so that you can claim a new patent on essentially the same active ingredients. So it's just prolonging the shit out of patents. And the FDA doesn't regulate price. It only looks at effectiveness. So you can price your drugs at whatever way. Anyway, so this thought experiment, the incentives to cure something like diabetes are all wrong under the patent system. But what if you cure diabetes today? How much money will you save? Everyone doesn't have diabetes. That's one of the most expensive diseases that you have. So what if the person who cured diabetes got a portion of those savings for a while, and then anyone could produce the drugs generically.
Savings, no patent. It's like,
but
then other people aren't making money, and it's like, what? So you want the pharmaceutical companies to give?
No. The pharmaceutical company would get a portion, like the government. At the end of the day, all of healthcare saves money from not having to treat.
So all of healthcare would calculate that cost and then give you a total sum of it.
Let's say you could figure that out, right? Let's say diabetes costs about, I don't know, it's a couple billion every year.
Okay. If that happens, do you think that there's a dystopia potentially where companies make secret wings where they try to at least completely propagandize a populace to convince them that something is problematic enough to purchase and that they can substantiate as a problem, and then they go in and go swoop in and save the day.
But how would you demonstrate what you've saved at the end of the day? Because if it was a fake threat, then it costs. It would have resulted in no savings.
But the thing is that it's completely relative, because ultimately it's whatever the market will bear. Like, you could say this product is bullshit. You could say that service is what the hell. There's things for everything that you could buy.
It's the snake oil problem.
And so we were talking before about
if they value it, is it snake oil?
Yeah. Well, this would be so in my hypothetical, it would be only things that you can actually demonstrate and know. So.
Well, it's a similar problem to defining someone's human potential. Yeah. Where it's just okay,
what if
they're spending money all this way, but under what heading? This is self-care because they have this disease that we didn't know existed or whatever.
If you could go back in time, right?
If you go back in time.
And shoot Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak when they were kids, you would know today how much money would have been lost on the economy.
Well, that's a tricky example. I mean, that seems harder.
You don't think about that sometimes?
Oh,
of course it's harder in time travel, but I'm just saying, you would know today how much money Apple has made since they founded it.
Oh, okay.
So if you went back in time and shot them, you could say, so many $1 trillion were lost. Right?
No, but that wouldn't even be close to it, Dorian.
Whatever the number
because
is.
It's whatever their market cap is or whatever the hell. But then what about all the technologization which
surrounding
everything else, which would be way exponentially more.
So that's why.
I don't know. Other types of capital besides money, wow, this Mac really helped me with these pictures I like.
I don't know. I feel like that's
a good segue into Anyway.
Well, I feel like that version of it's insoluble in a sense. I feel I mean, it makes more sense to me in the case of where, lots of people where there's a democratic element. Everyone who has diabetes,
Steve Jobs.
They can all attest.
Our emperor
to something, right? If 300 million people are saying that this has made tangible benefit in my life. I used to spend X amount of money on this. I mean, that seems quantifiable.
Yeah,
and is that
the story of one company though? Because you never know
is that valid enough?
Who would have sprung up to take their place?
Because think about Instagram,
it's
right?
True.
You've got
that's a good point.
Or you've got the butt girl.
It would have been Macintosh. Anyway,
Macintosh butt girl. Yeah. Macintosh apple bottom butt girl.
Window.
So Macintosh apple bottom butt girl becomes super
with the fur.
With the fur.
Okay.
Everybody's looking at her. You've got tens of millions of subscribers, people that follow you, whatever, and they're like, I want this person in my life, like, and then there's like some scientist that says, all she's showing you is her butt. And you're like, but that is incredible to me.
It is life.
It is life. And so at that point, what is considered an ailment for economies?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can still, like, if it were costing people money to not look at the butt, if it were like, if people... Right? If people were, like in this depressive stupor all day, having to visit their therapist because they're like, I don't know what the butt looks like.
I haven't seen it.
Then that's something you could quantify. But the true good
so it's something
is elusive.
So you suffer actively without.
Yes. And I have a simple answer for you. Multiplier. Just take it. Yeah, you just slap a multiplier in front of it. So let's say how Apple has over the span of Apple existing made so many $1 trillion, right? But who would have been there if Apple hadn't been there? You just say, well, we'll just say 25% of.
Nice.
Yeah, easy.
Pop a number on it.
That's how economics works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, but there's something profound about that, in that, it's a struggle to quantify anything. It's a struggle to be able to make any definite statement about, any of these really, really hard questions. And, so much of economics is, and in general, thinking about these things, they're all kind of stabs in the dark. I mean, there's, a great mathematical foundation for a lot of things. But at the end of the day,
it's kind of crap all over economics right now.
Well,
you can feel it.
It's just that, people look at it similar to, a kind of art in a way, that it's like...
There it is.
Each economist is offering something.
Saying that
offering a model that might help.
Insult. Yes.
Right, as opposed to the dream of, a unified theory of all economics or something.
And you know what? We will not... That's one of the things. Economics is a social science. I fully was aware of your illusions.
Your backhanded comment.
It's not a bad.
I'm joking.
It's not a bad thing, but I think the issue
I
would say is, how do people who are interested in it collaborate and use their powers for good?
Yes.
You know what I mean? When in some ways there can only be a piecemeal approach.
Yeah, and it's always adjusting and optimizing. It's like when we had when was that so a good example is the Great Depression, right? Because you had two things which people thought in our economic models at the time wouldn't go together. You had unemployment
and
on a massive scale, and inflation. Yes, and people thought those things didn't work together, and people didn't know how to approach it, and it took Keynes tweaking it a little bit to explain it and come up with a potential solution. And economics is a lot of tweaking and a lot of trying to dig, but that's the same with any science. I mean, whether social sciences are really moving forward, you can make the same argument about all other sciences. Are they really moving forward, getting to the universal truth? I mean, that universal truth of economics has to be embedded somewhere. Maybe if you prescribe to universal truths, it has to be embedded somewhere in almost in our DNA, right? So economics is adjusting and adapting. We have behavioral economics, which is trying to get at maybe some of our anthropological quirks that we might not have ironed out, why we're not 100% rational. And neuroeconomics and taking from psychology and economists are borrowing a lot of crazy math too. So, but those are good points. Where were we right before this? We were talking about
butts. You can't argue. You can't get paid for supplying butts in your economy argument unless you're suffering without the butt.
I mean, there's a case to be made that we would all suffer greatly without
Well,
bus.
the thing is,
I'd be suffering right now because this chair would be too hard for me.
Think about right, yeah. These chairs are actually really interesting because they're my grandmother's, and shout out to my grandma. This house, if she could see it, man, if she could, this is just got my grandmother all over it.
Link to the shop in the comp. No, just kidding.
So, in the old Victorian era, they wouldn't use any nails a lot of times.
Is this all joined?
It's all joined.
Oh,
it's all joined. And joined is actually way stronger because when you screw things, obviously you make little micro cracks.
And you have the same density and the same...
But with this, it lasts for so much longer. I think these chairs are over 100 years old. Actually, they definitely be...
less shearing, yeah.
Yeah, actually, in fact, I don't have it here, but one of the chairs that was in the old Congress, that was in Congress like way back in the day in the 1700s, my grandmother had it.
Really?
And it was in the same style, yeah. And it's interesting, too, Japanese people...
They've been doing joining...
The Japanese architecture is considered... it's in some cases like considered like not like economically scalable because of the way that it sort of demands things to be
and craftsmanship also,
and
like
so just like the time but the way that you can line up things with this one type of Japanese architecture, which I don't know the name of, is considered the most...
What if I knew that name right off the top of my head?
That would be so great.
Yeah. I didn't take notes well enough for this.
Yeah.
It is. It's like
pretty interesting.
It's a very high form. I think actually. So I was watching this thing with Nick Offerman from Parks and Recreation, Mr. Ron Swanson.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Anyway, but he's like a professional woodworker. Not a I mean, he did all that.
He looks like he is.
Yeah, right. And he just in these little interviews he goes on and on about like Japanese woodworking, and it's like funny seeing him, Mr. Ron Swanson talk about that. So
yeah, it's so funny when like you see people and they like so perfectly match the archetype or the concept that you had just totally projected on them, just totally projected that you go home and you get a big pile of sawdust on the table.
That's what I actually thought the first time I met you, Pete. I was like, this is what's the word? Peat.
Sawdust.
Peat flavored.
Yeah, it's not far off.
Yeah.
Shout out to Eric Teitelbaum family.
Yeah.
He is a amateur professional.
Woodwork?
Yeah, basically. He makes tree houses, just on the side though.
Nice. I built a treehouse once. It was great.
Yeah?
My dad. It took so long. I was at
because you used the Japanese method.
Yes. Yeah, and I didn't know much about the Japanese method when I was 8, so that's why.
So your dad's like, this is shit.
Yeah. And then he sent me to Japan to get a apprenticeship.
That's actually really considerate.
When I came back 10 years later, no. But it
didn't let you touch.
It took us so long to build that damn treehouse that by the time we were finished, I was too big to fit in the treehouse, which is great. Yeah, it was so good.
Like as you put the,
I was 18. I was like,
you go inside the house, but you're just putting on the final door, and you're like, oh, I have to put it on. Just do it from the outside, and you're like, oh, I can't go in now.
Or it's doing it from the inside, and you're trapped in there forever.
Yeah,
that happened.
Whoa.
I'm astrally projecting myself.
Okay.
To be with you guys today, so please free me.
Well, there is the whole the universe is a hologram. We're not going to go there.
So did we have any lingering questions about economics and the solution to all of the world's problems?
I don't...
Great.
No, I mean...
question.
Well, here's one...
Yes and no.
Here's one cool thing that I've been thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
So one big problem in economics is actually testing. And that's a big problem in any science. And I did say science. So one thing that I think would be really cool and trippy is, so you obviously can't go into a real economy. You can't say Delaware. Delaware's always a bad example. You can't say Wisconsin. You just don't get any subsidies for health.
Yeah, see how that works.
See, the rest of the country does. You can't do tests like that when the stakes are so real. So one thing I was thinking about that would be
Video
really
games.
cool. Yes, absolutely. Because you can divide your populations up into different servers and even into different like subgroups with different characteristics.
This
Well,
goes
I mean, the
to-
other thing is that, to the extent that people's personal lives are like cushioned from, economic shifts, then you can do more experiments. Like a lot of the problem is that
that's
like
true. It's just too much.
you're
of a burden.
fucking with people's ability to like clothe themselves and eat.
Also-
but like in a world where there's a basic minimum income or something,
Yeah.
I mean, people would
Well, what do
probably
you
Yeah,
be
but then
okay with,
people would
like,
argue,
turning
how,
the
who,
dials,
are who are you to fuck with my basic minimum then?
Yeah,
Exactly.
and who do you compare it to? I mean, like you can't say, the east side of America gets basic minimum income and the west side doesn't. I mean, apart from that being unethical, you have all the East Coast and West Coast states being like arguably very different in
Yeah.
terms of
Quite haphazardly.
yes, haphazardly.
100 years.
So and things like that. But video games would be really cool, I think, to do
So
that.
I thought about this.
My
on-
whole thing is just one.
Good.
The day
Don't mess
I don't
with
know
my
if they've
account.
invented this yet, but I mean, the day that video games pay you to play them. Is the
Well, I
day
mean,
a
obviously
new
that
game
already
comes along.
happens, right? With some people.
Well, I mean, if you like a sport.
It's called esports.
Yeah, it's esports though.
No, but I mean,
Esports
like,
is totally a real sport. What are you talking about?
I'm just surprised there aren't more games
What are you
where,
trying to
like,
say?
you're doing, like the whole CAPTCHA thing, where they're like, oh yeah, well, like, we'll get people, prove they're human, we'll use that to, like, help train our neural networks to recognize images.
Yeah.
Where it's just like,
Well,
you're paid
okay.
based on your value added to, like, you participated in this economics video game, and
Well, we
you
don't have-
added
Okay,
to
well,
this
we don't
amount
have rights
of
for
This
metadata.
transitions
efficiency
perfectly into
and
what I was going to
you get
say.
some cash.
Because I've talked about this in the podcast before. Like, I thought, like, I'm not sold on this being what's happening, but I feel like on some level it kind of is what's happening with, like, the universe. Is that, okay, I'm the universe and I'm like a being of some kind and I desire to go somewhere for some reason. I'm in some type of vehicle larger than myself to go there, right? I'm using some type of thing to go there and it takes a certain amount of time, right? So I'm going to travel across the universe, right? So what's the most efficient use of my time? To go into like VR scenarios where I can be a being and have it. To me, it's total high stakes because I think I'm gonna die,
Yeah.
and
okay.
I will die as Pete or whatever. And then, but it's for this algorithm of okay, well, based on like the meta circumstance of this being, you need to have like this life, and you need to be like a 13th century like Chinese girl. You got to be like you got to be Pete, and you got to be like a cellist, and you got to be homeless in the Byzantine Empire, and like or like whatever it
It's a
is,
good
right?
example,
And then
yeah.
you just keep going through, and you just keep going through, and then you're ding, we're here, and then you're like, okay, cool, that was the most efficient training that I could have had.
Wow,
is to live
Yeah.
as much as I could, right?
Mhm.
And then it goes to,
Sure, yeah,
but then
that's
it
good.
goes to the economy model, right? Where it's like, well, when do you get paid? And it's like, how do you get paid by the video game saying, okay, you're good. Now, if it's really getting paid, you would say when the video game is completely over in a way, you like, would that be like when no pieces of the video, you couldn't be playing the video game, that's when you really get paid. You couldn't, can they, is it cheating to say, oh, I'm going to give you in-game currency for your contribution? Like, oh, wait, no, I wanted a higher level of
I wanted
money.
cash. I
didn't want like a new skin for my battle axe.
I wanted Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. Wait, that was leading me down a little rabbit hole there.
Where are you in the hole?
I was, well, no, it's an economist might say that, so a video game is leisure, right? And you have a choice that you're making between leisure and work to get paid, right? So, but then at the same time, like you have your own sensibility of what's more important to you, more leisure, more pay. And so in a way, those things are the same thing because like you are sacrificing that time, that's your opportunity cost where you could be working, earning money, is playing a video game for your leisure, right? So you're equating getting paid with the value of that leisure the same. So in a sense, when you are playing a video game, you are getting the same amount of satisfaction or utility as being paid for that amount of time.
And I don't believe that.
Well, video games are just such a dense, focused source of entertainment for so many people that it's easy to see why people love video games so much, because it makes up for this, that little bit of leisure.
You don't have to climb to a mountain. You can do it in Skyrim, which is really fun in Skyrim, to be fair. Yeah. I will say. It's fucking great.
Or, scream at a dragon. Mm-hmm. Is that Skyrim?
That's what I was always fantasizing about, is yelling at dragons.
Just yelling.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember, shout out to Davion Atkins, really good buddy of mine. Mm-hmm. He's an interesting cat. I met him in New Zealand. He was American like me. He was from LA. Mm. He's from Compton, but he was gay, and he
sound like a song.
Yeah, it is. Mixtape coming out next week. So he basically couldn't come out as gay because of the thing of his family and everything, and then so he became overweight, and then he left. He was at UCLA, but he still hadn't told anybody, and then he goes abroad and just starts absolutely killing it more and more and more, and he travels. I lived in the same town as him in New Zealand, and I lived in the same place as him twice in Australia, for just as it happened to be. And so we were both traveling and stuff, and he had since gotten super jacked and super fit, and super good.
Overweight was he?
Oh, he was obese. And he's a really big dude, but now he's jacked, and he's super tall. And we were talking once in the middle of Australia, in the town of Yulara, which is where Uluru is, the biggest rock in the world, because we worked there together. He actually helped me get a job there.
Nice.
And we were laughing because we were saying, man, people say, just because you're unhealthy with your body or something doesn't mean you can't experience happiness.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely true. Obviously it doesn't, happiness isn't determined upon any one thing, right? Just like people who sacrifice their bodies in ways but to be so good at video games because that's where they want to work out and stuff. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But we were saying was, on the meta level of every single feeling that we have at any given time, the more fit that we were, the better we felt about everything. The colors were more vivid, the lights were brighter, the vision was sharper, the feelings that came were stronger, and the baseline didn't go as low, and the ability for it to go as low was harder.
Really?
Just from being exercised. And I think that while you can get a certain amount of in-game skin,
I see what you mean.
Battle
those things don't
qualitatively
connect. Those things are not the same. Yeah.
No, to some extent, because people can get ultimate enjoyment from living with a Japanese sex doll, and ultimately, is there anything wrong with that? What if by making love to my girlfriend, I this person that loves Japanese sex doll can get the same amount of fulfillment? Now there's nothing wrong with it either way. But from our experience, we were laughing. We were saying it seems though that the more you're in touch with your body as much as possible and the world at large as much as possible, the higher the highs, at least.
Yeah,
it seems the higher the highs.
So this might tie us back into the Adam Smith thing, kind of the difference between appearing lovely and being lovely, or the subjective or objective loveliness that you have. So do you think, I can't speak for the Japanese sex doll having population, but I can only speak for myself. But there's a question there. It's is having the sex doll is that the kind of fulfilling that being lovely aspect, or is it filling a void for that person? Like, what kind of, how do we, what's the actual happiness there?
It raises a really big question about capacity, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of studies show that, for instance, like if you watch porn, you release a lot of dopamine.
Yes.
But when you have sex, you release a lot of serotonin, not a lot of dopamine.
Yeah.
And it sort of stimulates higher brain functioning areas of the brain to be able to do it. And so it I don't know if the argument is that just dopamine release is better than serotonin. Of course, they all have their time and place, and they're sort of built on top of each other and sort of the evolutionary of the brain. But it seems that the experience of this more meta concept of the sex with a partner is more fulfilling than the more static circumstance of...
Static is a good word for it.
Yeah, of the doll.
Yeah. It's so, and that's a big problem with economics too, is it's like we just have a catch-all term for that, which is utility, which is great because it just,
it swipes
everything's just utility. Yeah. And one of the things that we like to assume all the time is that it's, you can order that like on a two-dimensional thing.
Of course you can.
Well, not always two-dimensional, but we do say that there's like, some ordinality to it. Like, this is definitely more than that, right? But, it's just so hard. Like, that's one of the, a problem that bedeviled economists. People were trying to say, like, that, the satisfaction that you could get from something, like consuming a candy bar, could be turned into a quantitative data piece called a util. For a while. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, what's it? So what was that? A util?
It's just like a candy bar gives you 5 utils of satisfaction, right? 5 peat utils.
What is that based on?
Based relative to the 20 utils you would get from an Asian sex doll, Japanese sex doll.
But what is but if it's like $1 equals how much gold, what's the metric?
You've hit it on the nose.
What's the util?
Actually, you've also debunked gold and money at the same time. Nothing. It's absolutely nothing. That's why it's so hard to prove. It's like you can say, how many water particles there are in a glass of water, but you can't say how many utils there are in a peat.
That's why.
Yeah, because at an even deeper level, we don't even really. Yeah, blockchain.
Right? Can we go there?
There's a mystery. No. There's like a philosophical mystery about perception.
We're not nearly smart enough. We also shouldn't talk about Bitcoin. I'm just not smart enough.
Bitcoin's
anyway.
on the shit list.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's a question about the nature of perception because, you're trying to quantify the utils or like whatever. Now, okay,
utils.
So one way of thinking about that is we're gonna vary like the counterfactuals. We're gonna be like, okay, here's a bunch of counterfactual situations and like relative to these other like possible universes, like this is how I'm gonna quantify. Or maybe you take a sort of like evolutionary approach. You say, oh well, the reason that you feel pleasure or here, pain there is because of your evolutionary history. Like the body is set up so that it's like, well, of course,
right there.
Yeah, of course, it's fucking he's gonna feel good.
Yeah.
Because
hey, babe,
we gotta do this.
But then the question is sort of like, okay, so this thing's pleasurable because it makes us what, like a more efficient evolutionary organism.
Okay.
But then there's a deeper question about
if you can love what gives you the most evolution.
Or is perception, is there a superfluous aspect to it?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I
totally think so.
Believe in some version of like a qualia type theory or like whatever.
Oh, is that like the picture things basically where reality is? Wait, what's the one where it's like reality is actually just a jumble of snapshots, and it's only the evolution of the human brain that was able to make it into a coherent for us picture. Not that that's how it is, but that's just how we...
Yeah, there's a million
versions.
That's certainly
true.
Yeah, like, so it's,
like it's just a random jumble at any time.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you know, if you do quantum mechanics, it's like you realize that, like, you know, so far as the mathematical structures encode the information, it's all mixed up in some big tensor product. And you just sort of have to remember, oh, this piece refers to the spin of a particle over here. This piece refers to the spin of a particle over there.
But it is all
jumbled up. But my main point was something that, like, okay, well, it could be that pleasure is good in itself, right? So that, like, the perception itself, and it's not, you know, because you could flip the reasoning on its reverse. Like, the reason, you know, it could have been that things, you know, always experience the pleasure of making love. But then there were some beings who only experienced it when they had sex. So, of course, those beings reproduced and had a lot of sex so they could get back to that feeling.
It's true. Also, just on a quick aside, did you know that no Greek philosopher ever that's, like, known about or documented ever... Plato. We don't want to go there.
But Socrates.
Yeah. But anyway, so what was I saying? Anyway, there's no Greek philosopher that I have come across that really advocated for, like, pure hedonism, like just pleasure is the only good thing out there. There was never a Greek philosopher that said that. And it's weird because we're living in, like, are we living in a super hedonistic time?
Yes and no.
Are we still actively constraining ourselves?
Well, yeah, of course we are. I mean, and no. It like, I think that if you look at, like, the obesity thing right now, it's a great example. Okay, what happened today?
I don't think...
What happened today? Do you know what really, really important human evolutionary accomplishment just happened today? Do you guys know?
What? Wake up in the morning?
It's not the anniversary. It literally happened today. Like, I don't know if you guys heard.
No. What?
A dude from Kenya broke the 2-hour mile. He did it. He did it in 1 hour and 59 minutes and 40 seconds, I think.
Oh, okay. That could have gone anywhere.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Now. Okay.
So, but we have more fat people than ever. We have more people that are overexerting themselves than ever, but we also have for the first time ever this accomplishment as well. So it's kind of like it's going in both directions. It actually really reminds me of in the Halo universe. You've got, like, classically you've got, like, the humans and Master Chief, and then you've got the Covenant, which is like a grouping that's, like, I feel like that's more of a Forerunner sound actually. The Covenant's like a collection of different species, right? Yeah, that's your bad.
Messed up.
Xbox Live, Halo 3 was the best Xbox Live time. Everybody knows that. Anyway, so...
Check the... no.
So...
Brought to you by Xbox.
Yeah, Bungie favorites. So... In the Halo universe, there was, like, a bunch of... The aliens that fought the humans, they were, like, a group of species that had come together and called themselves the Covenant. But originally, there was, like, these two that are, like, sort of the most prominent within the Covenant. There's, like, the elites who were, like, this warrior class. They were just super badass fighters with the energy swords. And then you've got the prophets, who are... There's not that many of them.
Is that Halo 4?
No, it's way before that.
Screw me then.
They got the prophets, and they're, like, these super technologically advanced people who never leave their chairs and are sort of, like, really... They can't really do anything with their bodies, but they can do everything with technology. And so what happened in the history is that actually the warrior class of people and which are called the elites, and the prophets... Because it's all different species, right, from many different planets. But originally, they were the same species. And so what happened was it was before they got to be really big and be really technologically advanced, but be really decrepit. What happened was it was the thought experiment before that caused the rift. What happened was people in society were like, we're going to go technology all the way. And, like, just go to the moon, and we don't even care about our bodies because we can create, like crazy tractor beams that just come down from the sky and do whatever we want, and we can float and shit. And then the elites were more like warrior class, like almost like the Japanese in the sense that there was a portion of them that were upset about guns coming into play because of the secrecy of the sword.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right. That was like a real thing. The Last Samurai is a great movie about it.
But the Japanese never had hang-ups with guns.
No, they did. That's what I'm saying.
But they didn't.
No. There's a portion of them that totally did. With the samurai class, it rocked the idea of the warrior class of Japan to its core, because guns trump swords. But anyway, guns trump swords, right? So what happens is there's this war, right? And so the elites the people that will become the elites, like evolutionarily, win the war, because the other people are still rather stocky, basically, but they're not that technologically advanced yet. So in the short term, the Tyrannosaurus Rex does kill the very small mammal, but eventually that mammal becomes a human, and so it'll win, right? So think about it that way, right? So then a small group of the people that would become the prophets, the technologically advanced people, they go to space above the planet in a satellite, a space station, and
Wait,
they just...
is that the Halo?
No.
Oh, okay.
We're not going into the Halo story here. This is...
Dang.
So now they're in a spaceship, and they just bide their time for like hundreds of years.
Because the meatheads can't reach them.
They can't reach them, and they're doing their thing, but meanwhile, they're just technologically getting better and better and better. And then when they come back down to the planet, they totally own. And they are crowned the leaders of the civilization. And
I never knew there was
the
that
elites,
much in Halo.
it's huge. And the elites are the protector warrior class of the royals, who are the prophets.
The pawns. So, I have a quick question for you. Did you ever play Halo?
No, this is all from...
the
secondhand.
books.
This is all secondhand.
Oh yeah, did you ever read the books?
I did read a couple of them. Yeah.
That's all I know. So Mass Effect.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I never actually played Mass Effect.
I played one. It was cool. It was like I liked. You have to play the game
Why are we
through
talking about that?
so that you can have sex with every single other species at least once. That's like how you beat the game.
Really?
No, but it's just I like Mass Effect, but it was weird. There's a whole story. Like, it's so crazy how they get these big stories condensed into a nice little package.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what the process is, like in the writer's room, like how they actually
they're stoned.
storyboard it
they're
out.
They're super high.
Well, even if they're stoned, they need some kind of. I mean, is it on a board? Like, is there like a whiteboard involved, or?
No, they're just throwing it out there.
A narrative like that.
I met a dude in college.
Well, there's a thing that's like, there's a thread I feel like running through. Because the thing that's hard about video games is that you have to design a game that works with counterfactuals. It's not like a story where it's just like, okay, this happens. A movie, this shot. You got to take into account like, well, what if they do that? What if they do that? And all these branching possibilities. I feel like so much trees. Everything that we've been talking about today, in some ways, has been about the difficulty of dealing with counterfactuals, quantifying them, just like figuring out, how the world could have been, how because in order to come up with any notion of value, it's all about comparison between these worlds.
That's crazy, because it's like at some point a video game has to go counter to reality for it to be an entertaining video game, right? Like, if it's indistinguishable from reality in literally every way, then it has no value, right? It has to have some type of...
We need the story element.
Yeah, but also paradoxically, I will also say that...
Well, okay, so what I wanted to say, just finish, is that in French cuisine, they consider the reason that it's like considered the highest cuisine because everything comes from failure, apparently. Is this concept.
Thanks.
Have you heard about this?
In fact, it was I who showed you the video of Zizek explaining
Okay.
that.
Break it down.
Oh, he just was saying it's champagne. Originally, they didn't mean it to get bubbly. It just fermented weird. Camembert, they just left it out, didn't, make it right. And then they went with it. He was like on a thing about, failure.
The French philosophy, basically.
Yeah, totally.
Some French friends.
It's interesting. I mean, it's funny that this is perhaps a sidebar, but more like not so much video games, but like interactive fiction. I felt like never took off because I feel like
the Did you see that Netflix thing? Like they're trying
the Black Mirror.
Yeah.
That was a good example of it, I think.
Of a failure or a success?
I thought it was moderately successful because...
I didn't watch it once.
What was smart about it was the way they telescope through time.
Oh.
So it's like you could take different paths, but then you wouldn't have to like watch the whole fucking episode. They would like recap kind of like what path you're on with like a shot of like different parts
so
of it.
Basically,
the way it incorporated like the cinema with the decision making, like, I thought that was smart.
So that's like a design aspect when you're trying to make something like that. Like you're incorporating what would be a problem is like having to leap back and forth into a nice little story, a nice little
and
mechanic.
Like good video games always do that because ultimately the fact is it's like I think people struggle with the counterfactuals, right? Because I remember the early experience playing video games feeling like, oh shit, I'm enjoying this, but like I'm never going to be able to find all of the keys or all the secret things.
Or
like
have
there's
sex
like
with all the aliens.
You have a desire for completeness that can never be fulfilled.
It's
unlike a novel,
Pokédex.
like every time you read it, it's different, but beginning to end, it's like one journey. So when you're trying to design an economy, I think there's always going to be like a balance between like how many counterfactuals does someone have to consider before they're exhausted? What's the proper game?
You're getting into the most interesting, like the core dogma of economics here, which is, and this is why, even Karl Marx held up the market as such a powerful tool because it's the one, organization through chaos. The market somehow magically, well, not magically, but it seems to appear. That's why Adam Smith coined the phrase, the invisible hand, which I actually don't think he coined in The Wealth of Nations. I'm not 100% sure. It
might have been in that Moral Sentiments one. Because, I remember, I think it originally referred to the feeling of nationalism that would make British people... the
invisible hand.
Take care of their own, even if there was a globalized capitalist system, they wouldn't exploit the homeland quite as much. And like an invisible hand, people's natural sentiments.
Well, in a lot of ways, that's what's so great about a colony to the host nation.
Well,
in a way, the opposite. But the people in the colony have an active desire to.
No. Not to the people in the colony. I'm saying the host nation's like, fuck yeah, I can do all this stuff in the colony that I wouldn't do back home.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also, a different kind of reverse. Yes.
Well, great. It seems to be the like a relative operator.
term. Yeah, no, to somebody who makes colonies, you saying, I'm not going to curse around my mom, equivalent.
But anyway, so, sorry, what were we talking about? The invisible hand, how the market works.
Yeah, it's like decentralized.
It's decentralized, it's order, it's through apparent chaos.
I interpret that as my understanding of 19th century economics, there's this thread that runs from Adam Smith through Marx, where in many ways it's modern, but they subscribe to a kind of labor theory of value. That the value of things comes from the labor time they put into it, or and then in
Adam Smith, really.
Okay, maybe this is a way, kind of a Whig history that economists tell about their own field. Yeah. But and then in the 1870s, in the marginal revolution, they start thinking about using calculus. So, okay, the value of a worker isn't in terms of their labor time or da-da-da. It's in terms of what's the change in the profits if I add one more worker. Take a little derivative.
Yeah, marginal productivity. Yeah.
And so that's the decentralized mechanism, right? Because you don't have to answer all of the deep questions about what is value. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, like Pete was saying, it's you kick the can to, in a sense, what are people, what marginal action are people willing to take?
The marginal,
just kick it to. Are they gonna pony up for it or not?
Economists are always looking at the margins, and that's really probably the most useful tool for a value. So that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and anyway, we were talking about the market. How did we get into talking about the market? How did I?
Well, I was
about-
trying to
Wait.
read some things
Marx.
together
What was it
about
about
counterfactuals.
Oh,
They were using
counterfactuals.
using
Yeah.
Marx,
Well-
Marx espoused that the market was king.
Yeah, the market somehow is able to evaluate counterfactuals to some extent.
That's why I call them
But-
markets. Markets.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, he didn't think that the markets were. I mean, but at the
So he didn't think the market was king.
no, he thought. Well, he. I mean,
Well, he kind of did because he's using his identifier as the proletariat.
yeah.
So that's actually like the mother force of the proletariat.
He
is
thought
the market.
I think his feelings on the market were neutral. I think he thought it was great, but he thought that it would like eventually like water from a leaky bucket, like everything would flow towards one point, the capital owners and stuff. So, but I mean, is the jury still out on whether the market distributes how? I mean, that's why inequality is such a big thing. It's like, but is that a consequence of semi-free markets? Is a really good question.
Exactly. Yeah, classic discussion, which is like, is this a problem with capitalism or a problem of not enough capitalism?
Is
right?
it
It's
also
like,
is it a problem?
if we actually had a free market? Essentially.
How do we
It's obviously totally relative.
it is
If it's
relative.
a problem.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like the host nation of the colony, are like, seems great to me. That's the colony. They flip the scenario.
Yeah, but I mean, is inequality a problem? We need some, even if it's just a very small amount of inequality to, have some incentives to do things.
Yeah, so I think that this is like the first step in the act of war is considered to differentiate yourself from the enemy. Because if you don't, then how can you have a war? And that's why a civil war is considered the worst type of war, because the differentiation is not clear-cut enough for you not to, at any point in time, maim or destroy something that's essential to your own existence.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's why
yeah.
a civil war is considered the worst. And so it's funny, though, how like our egos ourselves, the inequality of there's a shirt on this guy's back, there's not a shirt on that guy's back. Well, like whether the shirt being valuable or not, like that's different.
Yeah.
And we could say that, by quantity, well, he has one more shirt. So does that make him one more shirt valuable? But what if a shirt is actually something bad? What if you're holding a ticking time bomb?
Yeah.
You're
If
like,
you
I want to be minus ticking time bombs.
If you take that shirt and take out the R.
Yeah. Making some
Shit.
Making some shit.
But yeah, these types of questions are actually so many people like to shit all over capitalism these days with arguments that are essentially not the real problem. So this points to potentially some of the real problems that economists have been mulling over and thinking about. So when we're thinking about marginal productivity and marginal profit and things like that, so for a company, for a firm, the worst enemy that you can have is actually the free market, because you're inviting competition, right? Wouldn't it just be easier to have a closed market and to be, to have government protection and, have like a controlled price that you can, but...
well, that's why software is like the sweet spot right now.
In terms of what?
Well, in the world of bits, you can create something iteratively which could stimulate, because it's infinite, right? You can just make any type of reality in the world of bits, ostensibly. So because of that, if you create, well, you know what I mean.
It was so fucking easy.
Well, no, it's not that. It's not that easy.
What
but
about
if
blockchain, Pete?
We're not smart enough to go into that.
We're not smart enough for Bitcoin either.
No, we're talking about Bitcoin.
Oh.
We're talking about what are we even talking about?
It's the old cup of Joe.
We're
talking about eCoin and stuff.
No. We're talking. We're talking about software.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry.
So we're talking about how with software, you basically have a situation where it's like, okay, you have this land and you could do things, but it's like way harder to build a real house than to build a house in a computer, right? Like, just literally, right? So then think about it this way.
What if smoking? Dude?
No, seriously.
Do you understand what goes into? I mean, I'm not discounting building a house. But
the infrastructure.
Like, what are you saying?
Like, you need to build a house to be able to work on building your house in the computer.
No. I understand, but I'm saying
so
that once
to build a house in the computer,
you can't. That's non-commutative. You can't build the house in the computer before you build.
Yeah,
the
no,
the question is, what came first, the house or the house?
Yeah, I mean,
like digital house.
You have to ask yourself, like, what did I consider where I lived, how I existed? But anyway, about the software thing, it's like in the world of bits right now, you basically have a scenario where it's like, okay, you know what's better than me buying a fleet of taxi cabs and trying to make Uber happen that way? They already exist. I just do the software to connect the cabs, and boom, now it's a taxi fleet.
Oh, okay. I see
and so,
yeah.
Like, so too.
You look at like all the different, say it's like Philly tech firms or whatever. I mean, the large majority of them are like providing services that like plug in between different businesses.
Yeah, they leverage physical.
We're also at an age where the
the
connection between different industries is what's going to be the most value add.
Yeah, like there's this
because we're so over specialized these days. We need to find the little like connector Lego pieces.
But that requires a certain amount of interconnectivity, which is not common even yet in our society. Like, here's a great example. I was talking with this woman at my company who's heading up a division called Community. And Community is this fascinating thing where you basically take like an enterprise like Walmart, and then you take another enterprise like Pepsi, and you say, hey, yeah. Walmart's messier. And you say, hey, well, there are some things that we could actually do to help each other at the same time, and it would benefit us both in a way that's non-competitive to our
and
core
non-zero sum.
Non-zero sum.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is when it's zero sum, it's actually best. Right now with our economy, we're not at a point where en masse companies are working with each other to that level.
That's
where it happens at state-owned enterprises. Like, look at the Saudi government, for instance. You look at them and you're like, well, they have all these state-owned resources. They also control that structure, so they can say, oh, well, we actually know that if the things come into port here and they need to go there, and the transport's this, and the port operator's this, and the transportation on the ship is this, and the unpacking is that, and we actually own those assets, there's so much we can optimize through it to yield greater results.
Also, monopoly.
Also a monopoly on a higher level. Also a zero-sum game. Yeah. Also a zero-sum game.
Well,
yeah, I mean, that's why that first round of like trust busting in the United States happened just because in the 19th century that kind of vertical integration is what all the great American tycoons were doing. You got to own the railroads, you got to own the oil.
Bless Roosevelt. Bless him.
Yeah, exactly. Both of them. Teddy.
Nothing but hard work.
Oh, Teddy's cooler.
Teddy. You ever seen the movie The Sword? No, The Desert and the Sword? No.
Desert Storm.
It's a movie from the 70s. Sean Connery plays like a Berber tribesman who like steals a white lady.
Why have I not seen
Teddy
this?
Roosevelt's nerves. And
what? Sean Connery? Why does he play these roles he has no business playing?
No one knows.
Like Hunt for Red October.
It's almost like offensively.
Hunt for Red October. Have you guys seen Hunt for October? It's Sean Connery.
I've actually not seen Hunt for Red October.
So it's one of those Tom Clancy war thrillers, Cold War thing, and he plays a Russian submarine general, and it's the funniest thing in the world hearing him butcher Russian.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah, it's like
worthwhile.
It's like Jin Dobre, Solzhenitsyn, Perry Striker. It's just so. It's like, what are you doing? And then there's like
is Sean Connery?
There's like 20 seconds of Donald. There's 20 seconds of Sean Connery prepared Russian dialogue, and then they're just like, okay, everything's in English now, so Sean Connery doesn't have to,
if they made that decision halfway through the shoot.
Yeah, because he probably forgot like the rest of the lines. He was probably supposed to do the whole thing perfect Russian. Sean Connery's
It
the man.
reminds me of Ich ein Berliner.
Ich bin ein Berliner. Yeah, but that was actually cool.
Was it?
Difference
You
there.
mean Kennedy?
Yeah.
Kennedy was cool.
No, just the whole circumstance
Oh.
of the speech.
Well, it was him lending his solidarity to Berlin. A lot of people think that like had a good. That was before the fall of the wall.
No, I'm just talking about from the stance that he butchered how to say it.
Oh.
That's the whole.
Yeah,
that was
well,
the
Well, there's no way he wouldn't. Yeah.
No, he
He meant
just,
like a jelly donut or something.
Yeah, he actually said like, I am a donut. I am a donut. I am a donut.
That is true. A Berliner means a donut. But a Berliner, not to someone who lives in Berlin. Like, they're not calling themselves jelly donuts. So,
Yeah, they probably loved it.
That was a cool thing.
But see, that's the thing is like, we love Kennedy, right? He's this sexy guy, and he's saying,
there's
I'm
some
a
footnotes
winner,
with
but I'm a
Kennedy,
donut.
you know.
No, but like, the trope of it. And so too, like, Sean Connery, like, just to hear you go, shar, shar, shar.
It is cool.
In any configuration, you can be a Russian. Absolutely. It's amazing.
It is. And you know what? It's one of my favorite movies. Actually, one of my favorite genres of movies is submarine movies. Submarine-based movies.
There's so much procedure.
And it's
like
just
the stuff that goes on.
There's so much mystery always in a submarine movie.
It's like like those really intense closed room dramas. That's what a submarine movie is with a
You mean
submarine.
like Atlantis?
Oh, you mean the Disney
movie?
one? Yeah.
That was so good.
Well, you know my only complaint about that? Not enough submarine.
Not enough. Yeah, they used the submarine as like the absolute beginning.
Barely. They got destroyed immediately. It's disrespectful. Also, killing all the Atlanteans was also disrespectful.
That was sad, yeah.
You know what? That's a hidden gem, actually, of a movie. And you know what I also figured
really
out?
Good movie.
It is 1,000% a one-to-one ripoff of Stargate. 1,000%. Yeah, it just...
I've never seen it either. I meant
Stargate. Yeah, but
Stargate.
every idea is ported over one. Okay, so you have seen Stargate. You've seen Atlantis.
What's Stargate?
Stargate's this movie with
Kurt whatever.
The dude from that TV show now. He's like red. Whatever. Anyway, so okay. I will just tell the plot, and you guys can both be like, oh, is this Atlantis or is this the other thing? Okay, so first of all, there's a nerdy, down on his luck, professor, scholarly guy who is on his last leg. He's like, he gets no respect from the community. They all think he's a whack job. They won't fund him. They won't listen to him. And
he's not getting any pussy.
None. Well, he's a cat in both. So anyway,
he's a
then
what?
he gets thrown out onto the curb with all his bags and shit. It's raining, right? Then a mysterious patron comes in a car and says, "Oh, I knew your father," or something like that. And it's like, do you want to like come on this crazy quest because you're the weird nerdy linguist guy who's the one puzzle piece we haven't unlocked in this thing?
Nobody cares about this shit.
See your human potential.
And then they're a millionaire, and they have this super secret like whole operation setup of
underneath the mountain.
Underneath whatever, and like all this funding and scientists doing, and then they go on like this adventure. They see an alternate like a civilization lost to time, and then there's like a weird threat. The only time when they deviate is the bad guys in Atlantis are the people who come with on the expedition, whereas in Stargate it's the aliens. And the end of the movie, they all make it back, except for the protagonist. The protagonist wants to stay behind
in the movie.
Yeah,
I
thought
because
that
he
too.
falls in love.
I want to stay.
Although if you watch this, did you watch the
love.
show? Because
I did. I know. But this is the movie. Do you see how it's a one?
Yeah, you're right.
I just described
no
both
of
those
original,
movies.
Nothing new under the sun.
No, but I described.
But what is done?
I described the plot to both of those movies simultaneously.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. A
blonde-haired floopy guy.
You made me think about something because you're saying the accentuation of human capital with the nerdy dude. And it's like, what if in the future we're gonna get to a level of technological base where you got UBI and everything, so people can like this is probably around like 2100. I'm imagining like en masse UBI, maybe not in the entire world, but there's large swaths of the world that have some type of like support UBI like structure, which is universal basic income, and the world kind of becomes like an MMORPG. Like, it's this massive role-playing game where it's like, oh, there's this person across the world. Well, I can really do whatever I want. So, like, I'm going to quest. And it's like this quest where I've identified this person. And so it's all about the questing of with
that
this
all
person
sounds
and that
fun.
person.
And it makes you wonder, like, how did the economy become so little about fun?
Wait, so is it implied that all work is kind of done automatically by machines?
I think
we have unlimited
sort of
leisure.
The economy is more about fun over time in a way.
No, I thought you were saying that like just what the economy would require at that point is essentially like quests in like
something to do,
or, like whatever.
No, but the reason it's able to happen is because the market is able to determine that the best use of the human capitalization of Matt in America is for this dude in Chile to meet up with him on a water buffalo expedition in the fucking Kalahari Desert or something.
So you're
right? Like the market's able to identify
there's just, like,
that, and you
this
go on this
human need
quest.
to like fantasize about the creation of a kind of like deity, whether it's the market or a giant supercomputer or whatever. Who's just gonna figure out? It's like, God's got my back. God knows me. God knows that dude
the market
over there, and He's gonna find a way to bring us together. Like,
wait, that's what God told me.
Fantasize about that structure.
That's what God told me.
We were gonna meet just like this.
No, but He said I was special. So how can you be special?
Yeah, but mine was in a book.
Mine was written down.
Wait, God's been seeing you too?
My dad's dad.
Gonna have to have a word.
Dad. So it's like a longer chain.
Unbroken continuity.
But all of which is to say, though, like, I mean, one way I think about some of these issues, like, is in terms of, or like, how do I want to say it? A metaphor that I've used, maybe even like on the podcast before, is
spoiler.
Like,
no, that's opposite. Spoiler.
Well, you mentioned before about economics trying to figure out like, what can we do together better than we can do apart? When is there kind of like surplus that's created by just being together, Well, it's like so much of like capitalism is less about forging those like social relationships. Like it can be, it often is.
It's allowing them to happen.
Yeah, but a lot of the time it can turn into an exploitative thing where you basically go in there, cut some social ties, and then now this person has to take that minimum wage job because they don't have family support. They don't have this.
You're applying agency. So who's going in and cutting in there? Because the market doesn't, have any sort of.
It just doesn't. There's an incentive to do it. I'm not saying that it's like automatic. I'm just saying it's like.
You're saying if there was some
a quick buck off,
if there was some
suffering.
if there was some reward for me to inflict suffering.
Well, that's what happens.
Cutting off the social ties makes it so that people can't recover as easily. They get trapped in like a local minimum and just have to keep working.
Well, that's what a ghetto
same dead end job.
But how do you?
Which is to say that like, when we're talking about social systems, it's like they have to be
we have
strong.
We have to pick a perspective here because either we're arguing from the point of economic models, which implies rationality and it implies full information, right?
Right. So
or we're saying that that's flawed, in which case we can't really make a criticism about it either way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was riffing off like the idea of, because I was just thinking about stories, like the idea that like really what we want out of like an economy or social system or God or something is someone to figure out like what's my story, like how does my story like weave together, like weave together a social system itself or whatever. And
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
it's the nature of the podcast.
We have to be careful.
But then the game is like, how, can you make a model of that?
with
you have to have some.
Well, it's interesting with
assumptions.
like Aboriginals. Up until 1986 in Australia, you could legally kill an Aboriginal because it was for a long time it was very advantageous to the government of Australia to be like, yeah, oh well, I mean they're here, that's annoying for us. We want to do things. They're like saying it's their land.
Yeah,
it's
kind of like
I mean, if they're just gone, it'd be better, you know. Trail of Tears, Native American genocide, et cetera, et cetera. It happens.
Not to detract from that because that's terrible, but have you ever heard of the time that the Australian government fought the emus and lost?
Wow.
I did hear that headline, but I never clicked it.
So one of the biggest problems for early Australia getting off the ground was emus. Was actually like just messing with stuff, trampling crops. They're a big nuisance apparently. So the government, wanted to get rid of all these emus. They wanted to make them extinct. And they tried making their own government program with strapped cash, which obviously didn't turn out well. One highlight was they couldn't afford like a lot, so what they did afford was one car thing and a machine gun, and they were just going around machine gunning emus. Didn't work.
What?
They didn't work. It's really hard to kill an emu.
Really?
It's really hard. Like it's just too much work.
If it was
then
if it didn't kill it, make it stronger type thing.
They made open contracts for people to hunt and kill emus, but it was like it was hard and
because the emus got shot and then they learned not to.
They adapted and evolved.
Yeah, well, that actually
But
happened.
the government had to give this up in the end. The emus won.
You know what's really sad? And the government didn't give it up. They brought the buffalo like almost all the way to existence. What they would do is back when they started culling the literally millions and millions of bison in the plains of America, they didn't have refrigerators back then. But they also realized they couldn't just take what they needed for the day because then the herd would adapt. The herds would always adapt.
They
and
needed
it would
to wipe them out.
They would wipe out an entire herd, and they would take like less than a tenth of the meat every time, and just like let the carcasses be there.
Crazy.
And then just that would be what it was.
Yeah.
That's an example of when you were talking about production before. That's like very, very early production age where they're like, that's efficient. We're going out to an entire like herd of bison, slaughter them all, take like a 20th of their population, let it all go. That's productivity efficiency in that age. Yeah.
But also,
is it really that different from like the current age where like
efficiency it's not.
Let's just overproduce a million plastic bottles.
But here's the thing:
cost nothing and can never be destroyed.
When you're talking about that,
Jay-Z did that with albums.
It's only efficiency if you're not considering the costs. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing.
I like that very simple way of putting it. It only looks like efficiency.
Yeah, but over time, we understand the hidden costs of things, and maybe we ignore them, but then as more people understand, they put pressure on people not to ignore them, totally. And so like that way of looking at it is not wrong. It might just be ignorant at the time, and I think we can all agree that a lot of things that people thought were good ideas in the past, like slaughtering all those buffaloes, like the Aboriginal genocide and things, might have appeared like really good ideas, but were rooted in like an ignorance of the cost. That sounds so cold.
Yeah, it goes to this
or even if they had an inkling of it, like just the situation at the time made them discount it or be like, well,
that's the classical.
Because that's the thing that I love about
that.
Like I love reading. I was reading some Balzac novels like recently. I love him, and it's just always really fascinating to read these things. And like,
I knew someone was going to crack. Thought it was going to be me.
19th century, because you can just see how, like, everyone knew things like slavery and colonialism and all this stuff was like.
By
really
then, they knew it was wrong.
Wrong
for sure.
Well, by then, I mean, whatever you mean by that, but
I'm
it's like
sure there were some doubts.
It was just.
No, I mean,
everyone's
in mass, most people were
agreed.
Were of that, even if they weren't applying that sentiment. Just like now, people know that they
what he
shouldn't do certain
portrays
things
is
with
the
climate change,
shameless way that, like, rich people in Paris, it's like, oh, you're like a person who, you know, like, distant nobility, and, you know, you blew all your cash in your 20s on, like, whores and hashish and stuff like that. Like, well, what do you got to do? Oh, well, we got to go, like, head out to the colonies to go fuck some shit up to make my fortune and come back so I can, like, you know, regain my social status.
Father will never be proud of me.
Yeah, it's like, it's so clearly portrayed that it was like naked exploitation by
was it the Norwegian, the Denmark
by the douchebags of the day, like
Leopold. It's like Leopold
specifically.
You remember
Belgium?
Yeah, with Leopold, with what he did to
the Congo?
The Congo.
Oh,
yeah. He's like that. He's like, I'm gonna make a name for myself, and he just
I mean, the Baltic stuff is happening. I mean, I don't know what's early for you in terms of colonialism. I mean, this is like the 1830s.
Oh, that's not early.
Belgium's like more late 19th century.
Yeah, no, I mean, colonies have been around for a long time.
Well, but like there's this really specific configuration that develops, like after the birth of, you know, whatever Adam Smith was doing and the Americans thought they were doing, like in the late 18th century.
Yeah, minding their own
business.
Because
it's, you know, although slavery and things like it, and colonies or whatever exists since the beginning of time, this is capitalistic colonialism. Like, this is like capitalism at home, and the hidden cost is you've enslaved the world. Like, it's the merger of the two systems that led to the, like...
Yeah, if you want to talk about the costs, dystopian. I mean, like, the costs that have, you know, the kind of the negative PR value of that's trickled down and increased through the... I mean, it's not like England owns all of its colonies anymore, and it's you know, there were bloody revolutions to throw off the yoke. I mean, even if you're not talking about the human cost there, like if England was discounting that I mean, it's strange. Actually, I don't know exactly how much cost from that England has borne by itself. I mean, they're not the empire that they used to be, but it's right. Yeah, are they worse off than they started? I don't think so. It's strange.
Were they worse off than when they started?
I mean, they were already.
No, I mean, London is still one of the financial capitals.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, not for long.
You would know more than I.
Yeah. Well, you know, they put all their eggs. London was basically the financial capital of Europe, of the EU, and I mean, most of England's business has to do with the EU because they're, you know, natural partners. They're right next door to each other. I mean, Brexit is a whole discussion, but I think at the very least they have, you know, I don't think they can claim the title of financial center of Europe anymore, you know.
Yeah, certainly not.
And you know, so much of England's wealth rests on its financial sector, like as is true in America too.
Yeah, well, a lot of people talk about how, like, similarly to Trump, how, like, if it were just up to the Northeast corridor and the West Coast of the United States, which at least comparatively control the vast majority of the power, compared to any other power center of the United States, the Northeast corridor and the West Coast would say, "Oh yeah, Trump would never be elected," and then just like in London, like most people in London, like it was trending like 95 or 98% no way on Brexit, but then everybody outside the Northeast corridor,
well,
and the
all
West
you can
Coast,
say is that,
outside
like,
of
the
London
Anglo-American world is sort of in it together.
I think you could just say they're in it right now.
They're in it. Yeah.
Isn't stepped.
Yeah.
There was a great documentary I watched. I mean, there's like some news program did it.
And French
about
did it.
they just like infiltrated like Cambridge Analytica or like whatever. It was a couple of years ago now. Yeah. But they like sent someone to go like talk to the guys and be like, I'm like trying to run an election in like insert random
That's
African
crazy,
country.
yeah.
Like, can you help me out? Like, manipulate people and do like dastardly
Oh,
stuff.
I think
and they're
I know
like,
what you're
yeah,
talking
baby,
about.
we can.
I think I saw. Was this on Netflix or something?
It was. I don't know. It was not on Netflix, but it was like
Or something?
like a British news. I think it might even
Like a BBC
might have
thing?
been
Yeah.
BBC, yeah.
I think I saw that actually on Netflix, a similar thing, of where they were just like, oh yeah, you want us to con like this minority of the country into thinking this way?
Yeah,
For the
yeah,
next
it was great because they like
election?
intercut it with like pictures
Yeah.
of the billboards
Yeah,
and like
or,
what was on the
like,
TV like
oh,
back in this like
You
country.
know what? We'll just make a cool campaign where kids think it's cool not to vote. It's
Yeah.
like, whoa, cool. And
Did they actually do that?
Yes, there's like this whole thing. I think it's
right,
in
that's the thing, it's
South
like-
America somewhere. And
as
there was a song. It was like, no, don't vote or whatever. But you know,
They got like their
arguably,
in-house DJ.
they signed someone to make like a song that blew up. They were having dance parties, crazy. Anyway, but you know what? Arguably, the same thing is in America. It just might not be
It's
as
everywhere forever.
recognizable.
Yeah, it's always been
How
like
many
that.
young people turned up for the last election with Trump? You know, like young people are still really trailing behind in terms of votes, and you know, we're going to bear. Young people are going to bear the cost for the longest.
Yeah, I never voted.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, truth be told.
What?
Okay.
What about in the Australian elections?
Yeah, I gave my 2 cents.
Well,
Truth be told, though,
Now's a good time to vote.
The elector,
Yeah.
I'm registered, but the thing is that like, even when I would have overseas, like I still could have done it.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I still could have.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, with the electoral college the way it was, I could have voted in either New Jersey or Colorado, and they both went Hillary. But honestly,
you were for Trump. No.
I was for Trump, and I was for Trump, but not for the reason, and I've said this before
Oh, yeah,
on the
yeah,
podcast, not
yeah.
for the reason everybody wants it, but because I thought he seems to disrespect everything, violate everything.
Yeah, and shake it up.
People are going to be like, whoa,
That
we
was a
can't fucking
major-
do things like
yeah,
this, and now there's a
yeah.
lot of conversations that are
You
happening.
can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, he destroyed everything that was sacred. Apparently, you can never do the X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You'll never be president.
It's
He's
so
like,
funny.
fuck all that. And
Yeah.
it really pulled back the curtain, man.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's not what most people voted for him for.
Yeah. Well,
they voted for him
no,
saying
most
that the
people-
things that he was doing would be beneficial in themselves.
I think
it's
people-
more like as a repercussion.
Most
they're
people
beneficial.
wanted a shake-up, honestly. I mean, on both sides. That's why, you know,
Bernie Sanders.
Hillary was projected to win by a landslide, but she just didn't. She didn't have the shake-up element. And you know, Bernie Sanders like was grass-rooted. It was like crazy.
She
grassroots
shook up
thing.
his campaign enough.
Well, I mean, there's another problem we have in politics. We should do ranked choice voting.
Oh my god, yeah, it's the single biggest thing.
Ranked choice
literally
voting.
insane
Oh
that
my
we don't do
god!
it. Yeah.
Like instead of voting like, you know, we have a winner take all system, and instead of voting like I want you know, the red flavor of ice cream or the blue flavor of ice cream for president. What you do, yeah, that's what it is. That's honestly, we don't really have a
Yeah,
choice.
yeah.
We're not gonna, you know, even
Give
if
me
you're
that
like,
ice cream.
oh, the Green Party, like I'm gonna
That
throw away
green
my
ice cream.
vote.
Yeah, either throw it away or cost someone like
Okay,
an election.
so what you do is you ranked choice voting is you have like your first pick, your second pick. You basically all the candidates you order them from best to worst, and then if your first pick is you know, has no chance of winning, if they're out, then your vote still counts, but it counts for your second pick and on down the chain.
Yeah,
So
that single change, next thing you know, it would like encourage so many more interesting people to run. It could
Oh my
lead
God,
to, like,
yeah.
third parties,
And
more parties,
and no
like,
throwaway votes. A throwaway
Yeah,
vote
people actually because
is
so
a
much.
travesty of democracy.
Yeah, and so
And
much
when
of
it
the
gives
problem with
so
our
much
politics
power, I
is the
think,
difference.
to people that the government would be like, oh fuck, I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, maybe. But
Don't know about that.
No, seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
that's-
yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it.
Like that government.
So
voice.
much of the weird labor of politics is like, you know, strategizing about how to vote. Like, well, I think this, but like, I know
Oh.
that person's not going to win, so I'll
Oh, it's
do this.
It's like
And so
second, third, fourth level thinking.
Yeah.
It's
So then,
insane.
like, all
yeah,
the
they
pundits
do it with their people, but
and everyone tries
it's
to
not
like
done with the
deconstruct,
vote.
like, what does the American people think?
Yeah.
What are they ready for? What do they want? And no one fucking knows because
and there's no mechanism to figure that out.
What do you mean? Fox news polling is the best.
No, I mean, there's that. I mean, like, all the news things are behind the parties.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
I mean, money makes everything weird in this
Vice
case,
was good
but
for a time. It got a bit too political, though. It definitely got into the sphere.
I don't like Vice anymore.
It's not what it used to be.
No. I just want my documentaries.
Shane is sold out.
I want my documentaries
You got a hefty pay day,
to be
and I
about
love your North Korea documentaries.
Yeah, they did some cool stuff though. It wasn't always just like
there were a couple of years there where they
in Hamilton.
People out around the world.
This isn't the secret pot farmer in the Andes Mountains. You know?
Yeah, I saw
one of my favorites was like
they
talk about the Ghanaian film industry in a whole documentary.
Which Guinea?
What's going on?
Ghana. Like
Ghana. I thought you were talking about like New Guinea
it was like
or something.
The tech industry was kind of like getting built up there.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I think I saw that one.
Yeah, they go into like this guy Socrates, Sappho or something like that.
Yeah, and it's like super
director, and it's this weird
crazy
mix of like it looks like kind of like they made on iMovie, and they're like speaking of contemporary concerns, but then there's also some sort of like traditional like witchcraft being like employed to like make sure that like the scam email goes through.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my god, that's amazing, dude.
And other things, but yeah, yes,
and
but yeah, they kind of.
Well, anyway.
Problematic. Anyway,
I think
let's cap it here.
Yeah, we should cap it maybe.
Well, it's been a good discussion.
Yeah. Good night.
Anything you want to plug? This camera here.
My new competing podcast. No, I am completely plugless. I had a fantastic time with you guys, and I hope we get a chance to do this again.
Arvoyarns.